we should probably give a lot of leeway on that and say, it could be any time within the next 1.5 hours, because we tell everyone it's fucking 20 minutes or half an hour. But if you know the way that show works, God forbid you're the guy like fifth in line, because, mate, that could be 3 hours after the time.
That was me.
Yeah, I'm sure it was, mate. Yeah. So I've tried to tell people, listen, do it the other way. Like, if anything, give yourself a lot of wiggle room. But listen, it just tends to be that we wreck those people, sadly. They're always, the best is when it's actually a pro and they're not used to shows and they're actually just typing, like, I'm ready now. And it's like, I'm just seeing that chat, like, I know we've got like half an hour still with some focus. Anyway, you might have seen him on that episode. I'll even point out, by the way, maybe we can talk about in this episode. He actually, by the way, that was a perfect example of what you should do if you're not someone who's got massive exposure and you come from a minor region, is you gave like very specific, but not delusional aspects where there could be interesting matchup areas. Like, people might remember 2 details that literally ended up being mega relevant. One was that Arya, the Korean mid laner of Detonation Focus Me, because Nymaera here specializes in the LGL, the Japanese league, actually was someone who would be able to directly compete with Perks. Spoiler, if you saw the games, that happened. In fact, you could even argue in those games he was much better player than Perks. And then the other detail I remember, this is the one other people seem to have forgotten, was you actually made the point that the top lane, who is actually a Japanese player, Avi, was actually basically using this really interesting approach there. He basically just like was super aggro at the beginning of the laning phase, and if you didn't know this though, it would potentially catch you off guard, and he could actually get like a lead on loads of it. And both those things just end up happening. Like, it was actually all pretty legit.
It happened.
Yes, true. But no, I would just say there's a good example, by the way. Yeah. Obviously, in that scenario, people are never going to go and be like super into that region instantly. But if you can just give them a little piece like that, it's sort of a breadcrumb they can follow. And I'm sure, by the way, that already increased interest in, that team when they went back to LGL. I'm sure some of them was interested in watching them.
DFM have been around since like 2013, so they've kind of like become a bit more of a household name. But yeah, no, they've obviously, I kind of, with what we're doing today, I'll be kind of looking and maybe tying in. There's a chance that some of these teams actually play DFM, so I can kind of bring back some of that knowledge too. But yeah, no, they've always been a hometown favorite and slowly increasing their international exposure.
Exactly. And my other guest, this is actually, like, Nymaera's done some content before. This is actually one where basically, I'll just be straight up, like, I like to just try different people out. People who've never done any content before. So you're like, well, angle it from. And so I actually know Yasukeh here because he's on my Discord, which, by the way, isn't as simple as like you just joined a Discord. If you've ever seen it, my Discord's like Fight Club. Like, you have to instantly get involved in like legit convos, and if you literally like show that you don't have the right vibe, it's like I am Tyler Durden. I'd kick you out personally after beating your ass. Like, people don't get it. Like, I saw there was some guy where we booted him from there, and he tried to sort of go on Reddit like, oh, he's really mean on there. I'm like, this is perfect. This is exactly the fucking advertising I want. I don't want anyone who thinks I suffer fools kindly to just rock up in there. So Yasukeh has actually so far survived the Crucible. An interesting detail is he's actually someone who isn't just a random pleb. He's actually a challenger player, but he does play mid Tryndamere, so I will add that context in there. So I have the question for you immediately. Like, first of all, obviously you're an NA player and sort of you're on E-West, etc. So here's my question, right? Before we get into it, because I want to actually know what, like, you can set the expectation yourself. So I brought that up that you're a challenger player because, like, I mean, in some ways it doesn't matter, mate. You have to understand, I can literally bring on like Perks, mate, Faker Spoken, so I could bring him on and people would tell him he doesn't know what he's talking about. So that alone won't save you. But I'll ask you just so you can tell us what's a reasonable expectation. When you say you're a challenger player, but you play Tryndamere mid, does that actually make you a really good challenger player in the sense that you're actually playing a really weird champion to be in challenger with at mid lane on that one? Or are you really just a one trick? Like, where would you put yourself? Like, what level of expertise should people expect from you on this episode, Yasukeh?
Yeah, so I do understand a lot about the game and sort of different matchups, but my sort of focus is I have a lot of very poor things as me as a player. I'm not necessarily the best mechanical player. So I'm trying to find ways to sort of break the game in ways that are not necessarily typical, like something you'd see of like Perks or Yasukeh, more of their kind of play styles of, even if they're not necessarily winning lane, they're going to do something across the map, sort of like pass on the disadvantage from one team to another. Okay. And also just in general have a lot of experience like playing against these other teams. And it's not like I couldn't do well on other champions, but that's just generally what my content is around. That's been what's more successful. And a big reason why I haven't really expanded out my champion pool is just because my content is so Tryndamere oriented that it's going to be a little bit more difficult to sort of
understand having a brand.
Niches. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, that's quite reasonable there. You didn't set the expectation too delusional. I'll just say that part. I mean, as much as someone will go, you just have one chick, it's like, actually, you probably have to be pretty decent to be challenging playing that fucking champion mid lane. Like, even as he says there, you might know some weird matchups, you just have to be able to fucking win them. Like, everyone thinks they're fucking gangsters till they actually get that LP loss. Then you'll all soon quit and just go fucking spam a zero or something. So, right, let's get into this episode then. So, I actually thought, by the way, this is where, like, obviously, with Nymaera, I know to some degree what he's going to talk about. I have no idea on you, Yasukeh, so it's totally open floor here, mate. You go whatever angle you want to take on any of these topics. You just give me your thoughts, basically. I actually thought we might talk just initially about that, actually, what I teased in the opener, where obviously, because my sponsor is a crypto sponsor, I have been interested to follow the plot with the LCS, where basically, if people remember, off the top of my head, I'm going to say like a month ago now, it was actually TSM who announced they were doing a long-term partnership with FTX, which is an exchange for cryptocurrency. And basically, here's the detail that everyone forgets in that story, right? Idiot TSM fans obviously like barely know English, so they just saw the name like, oh, sponsor, and then they saw the number. Oh my god, they saw like a screw in their brain. It was like they saw Reggie as Scrooge McDuck, like a fucking giant vault of money. They didn't notice, right? It was a 10-year deal. So even though the number was obscene, it was 210 million. It was technically, that's about 21 million a year, obviously. Like, so actually, it's, by the way, that's not actually even like the most absurd sponsorship you'd hear of an esports. There are other really big orgs that have like similar size deals from enormous brands. But the interesting thing to me was, obviously, when that was announced, it sort of simultaneously came with this news where Riot was sort of like, whoa, look, you can have that sponsor, but they can't be like on the jersey, and basically it's not going to be part of your LCS content. It's going to sort of be like, it was implied like maybe you use the League of Legends players, but they like outside of the context of pro player could do a video about it, or maybe it's other aspects of the org. I'm assuming like all the Fortnite type kid shit, you know, right? So then the follow-up story, and this is what we might talk about now, is that FTX, the same sponsor, is now sponsoring the LCS itself, which effectively means, which is the point everyone obviously instantly said on Twitter, which is like, well, that is a bit rich that Riot sort of like, we can't show that on the LCS broadcast, except for a price. Yeah, like they instantly sort of like, you know, like just changed their own mind. Now, here's the thing. That's one angle. You can go with that. The other angle to me is more like the abstract general concept of like, there haven't been that many sponsors of things like the LCS, to be fair, and you want them to be in big things. Obviously, it's in an emerging market, etc. So I think you don't have to, you can make this any angle that you want on this. What would you say about this topic, Nymaera? Because I'm always interested. Like, I never expect people to be experts in business, in a different domain, but I'm always interested in what people's thoughts are. If you think it can have some impact.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the FTX deal with TSM, it was a name sponsor, so like they are TSM FTX now, but then effectively Riot said, oi, not on LCS. And as far as I'm aware, the FTX thing with LCS is not going to be name sponsor internationally. So I'm trying to remember if that was a part of it. So it's not
something like that.
Something like that. But then you look at what the LCS have been doing in terms of placing their sponsors already. You've got already a lot of stuff on banners, right? So you've got, I mean, in the LCS, you've got like Kit Kat stuff. You've got State Farm Analyst Desk, the freaking Bud Light Ace and the Red Bull Baron Power Play. Like, it's already getting pretty deep into everything that is going to recur. Is now got a quite large monetary value just in terms of the exposure to that sponsors will get from that in terms of the gameplay stuff. I'm not sure at what point it starts like really affecting the quality of the broadcast when you pin a sponsor on absolutely everything that happens. I'm already getting a little bit annoyed being like, oh, it's not just an ace, it's a Bud Light Ace. But obviously one of the big things about esports is trying to make things sustainably economic, because I mean, you can talk hours and hours about how money isn't getting back to the teams, it isn't getting back to the players, power is in the hand of the developer.
Sure.
And we don't have TV deals yet. We don't have that. You know, you're not a Six Nations rugby competition where you can do with various different national TV competitions. And rugby is my main sport, so that's what I tend to go
Fair
to.
Enough.
So I'm kind of interested what FTX are actually getting out of this, if it's not a naming deal. Because I haven't looked into the details too much. I mean, I saw the initial announcement, like, funny that name's back. Funny that's been a little bit in there. I think the main thing for me about this is the PR doesn't seem to be that clear, which is quite a common thing in esports. I think we can all acknowledge that. So I'm really interested in seeing what the LCS is going to get value out of this, and then also why the heck didn't they communicate what the actual specifics of it are, if it's going to bring a bit of that hypocrisy with it.
You have any thoughts, Yasukeh?
Yeah, so I'll kind of go on the other angle, which is more of like the morals and ethics angle. So this is the same company that sort of had the Neom deal almost a year ago. Yes. And that Neom deal was massive. And if
Oh, I
it
didn't know
had
that,
gone
actually.
through, it would have been amazing for the
Sure.
sustainability aspect. And it's to kind of contrast it with the sort of FTX crypto deal, is that what's it called? There is kind of a general pushback against crypto, like in the zeitgeist, about all of these different issues with it. It
Sure.
seems like that's something that's being pushed pretty hard.
The volatility.
Um,
Esports is already volatile. Crypto is also volatile. So it's like a little bit worries about that, I think, from what I've heard.
Yeah. And so there is a little bit of pushback on that, but obviously not as much as the Neom deal. So I imagine this is just going to go through. And in the same sense as the Neom deal, with any other sponsorship, they would have taken a lot less money. But it seems like the FTX and the Neom deal were much more than the PR is kind of worth it. They kind of probably expected that there was going to be a bit of a PR hit for both of these. Probably underestimated it with the Neom deal, and then had a pretty accurate grasp on this FTX deal, which is going to be great for the sustainability of the league. But there really aren't that many sponsorships coming into it, and this is really kind of a great kind of fallback to have, because LCS viewership is generally just down. A lot of people are kind of getting burnt out on this kind of stuff. The format causes the entire regular season to mean nothing, because spring goes into summer and then 8 teams get in. So pretty much the entire year doesn't matter. Like 9 teams were in contention until basically the last game. And so all of these things considered, it would be very good for the sustainability of the esport. And in general, there's a lot of money being thrown around through like crypto and crypto sponsorships. So them and Neom seem to be the only people who could kind of really pay these sort of premiums for getting past the PR barrier.
Sure. Right, I've got a few angles on this one. Like, first of all, and I'll just address very briefly the whole TSM versus Riot angle, which is sort of like, why is TSM not allowed it? And even though you are right, like, I think contextually, it's not like they're literally doing what they said. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not quite as simple as people made out. It is a little bit though. Like, it almost implied, like, well, we'll sort of let you have the sponsor, but we sort of do frown on it in some sense. Like, they are implying they don't want it on the broadcast, but on the other hand, yeah, it does make it seem like, but if you pay us, then maybe we do want it. Like, which is like, come on, Riot. Like, that's just usual Riot tricks, which is, unfortunately, this is the main reason, by the way, to go to what you were saying about how, like, the game dev has basically all the control right now. The downside of that, like, I have no problem with them having ownership and control and have rights, etc. Like, those are all, like, listen, property rights are essentially, like, the fundamental fucking, like, foundational point of, like, Western civilization. So I'm sure we can all accept that they probably need to exist. My issue is just that, like, Riot does seem to almost have, like, an uncharitable element to how they do this, where they give me the vibe that's like, since this is mine and you want to do something with what's mine,
to a different standard.
Yeah, like either I need to be the one who primarily benefits, even though I might not be doing anything involved with it, or actually I might just say, since I don't benefit enough, you just can't do it. Which is like, listen, again, I understand the premise if you own the overall thing. The problem I have is, with just think of the ambience of this conversation, is that we all know, like, the teams are losing money out the ass, like the players have enormous salaries, that basically the show is bigger in terms of optics than actually, like, the substance behind it in terms of the business. So the problem is, like, it's not really like a great look that the fucking massive game do have all the power. It's sort of like, oh, you peasants cannot make money, but I can. Like, that's not a great look in itself, but that's also par for the course if you've just seen the way that LCS teams have gone. Then the other angle is, I totally agree, by the way, it might seem from the outside like, well, what are you even getting from it if you can't even put, like, logically, by the way, if I sponsored TSM and I had a real company that has to make, like, profit, I have to show something to my shareholders, yeah, I would consider it a failure if I sponsored TSM and I can't have my logo on the brand of the League of Legends jersey, because if I'm coming from an esports perspective, League of Legends is their main shit as far as I'm concerned. It's like, but that's why the fact that they're crypto and the fact that they're, like, more of a fringe sponsor is what makes this actually probably a great deal for them. Just as, actually, if you think about, like, I'll give you a perspective of my own. When I myself work with a crypto sponsor, well, one reason why they'd be way more horny to work with me is because they don't have the option of sponsoring every team out there and all the big people in esports. Like, some people don't want to be with either betting or crypto. That's just an immediate no, or they just worry what the implications could be. So immediately that makes not only someone like me potentially more appealing, but it means potentially you have to pay more for that because there's less people that even can take the sponsorship.
Yeah,
so the good
more exclusivity.
Yes, the good news is, like, absolutely, there's going to be no issue on their end. Like, companies, in this case, if it's betting or if it's crypto market, it's betting and crypto, but in this case, it's just an exchange. Their logic will be like this. There's not that many, like, legit big places we can sponsor. So I assume, for real, the FTX angle is this. Look, yeah, we're not going to get directly on the broadcast, but the fact that people even are hearing in the association and the name FTX means that, like, if they happen to also be in the same Venn diagram overlap of someone who's at the same time seeing cultural zeitgeist of like, wow, everyone's into crypto now. If they then decide to buy crypto and set up on an exchange, it's at least in their brain that they might go, maybe I'll try FTX. You know what I mean?
The more you hear it, the more it normalizes it.
I would assume that's basically the main thing they're getting out of this. Which, by the way, if you consider the fact that these sorts of companies, if they're done well, are basically like a license to print money, as betting companies often are, it's not even that bad. It's worth paying over the odds just to get your eyeballs, from these people.
One thing I'd say about the League of Legends thing, because I know you're saying like TSM, like primarily towards they will be a League of Legends thing, but like if you go towards the Fortnite thing as well, I mean, you think about the way I view League of Legends, that it's like the biggest esport in the world, which no one really talks about outside of the sphere. It doesn't really branch out outside of the sphere.
Doesn't have much overlap.
Especially in North America, especially in the West. When you're getting towards Europe and stuff, that gets a bit bigger again. But of course, TSM, obviously mainly NA, despite having massive fans within the English-speaking audience. When you have something like Fortnite, that's something which so many people have their kids playing, have kids' friends playing, stuff like that. It does have more outreach like that. So I think losing the League of Legends thing, it's a hit in terms of the name and not being able to show in the LCS. But I think that you look at some of the other things, the bleed out effect of that is potentially quite high, although I'm not that well versed on the numbers for it. So it'll be interesting to see how much value that gets.
I think TSM's YouTube views from League of Legends content is actually a very small amount of their content. Like some TSM videos could get like 50,000 max views, while their other Fortnite stuff gets several million views. There's also that, but then TSM solo queue players have FTX in their name. So that kind of shows up on all sort of League of Legends content that you see. So even if it's not necessarily on the LCS broadcast, you're going to see it on every stream, on every YouTube video, on all of that kind of stuff.
Here's the dark thing, though. It's like, and this is real, I'm not even trolling when I say this. Years ago, like I'm off the top of my head, I'm talking like 2013. So we're talking for a long people, like an age ago in esports. I actually, no joke, did make a joke one time. I think I even did it on Twitter where I said, this is when like at the time there was not many mainstream companies in esports. My joke was, since I knew esports was like a fucking black hole of just throwing money in it, it's going to be that way for a long time. I even said back then, we should actually objectively try and court the most fringe possible sponsors. So the joke I said was, we should try and get South American drug lords, we should try and get East European pimps and North African gun runners. Now here's the thing, I intentionally like framed it that way to be like a ridiculous like premise. It's not even that fucking far from the truth at this point. We look at like the Neon deal. Like I was almost too on the nose with that one. Like I meant it as a joke, guys. I just meant like if you really want any money, because my joke back in the day, not that it's literally money laundering, but like you need people essentially where they can't use the money anywhere else. They have to sort of blow it somewhere that never make like the most sense. So esports, I meant it as a joke, but actually it's becoming that sort of like it's just another place you can dump your money.
And kind of relevant to that is, I mean, even back in 2013, wasn't it TSM Snapdragon as well? They had another name sponsor.
Yeah, they had one at the beginning. Plenty of
teams have been through this. Like, it's not unusual to have name sponsors. I think the main thing is that TSM for League of Legends is TSM. It's never going to be TSM FTX, or LoL Esports doesn't want it to be because they want TSM to kind of remain it like that, I would imagine. So I wonder if that factored into Riot as well. Just been like, no, we don't want to destroy this sacrosanct kind of thing that we've had so many impressions of over the years with.
With that,
keep going, Matt.
Wait, hang on. With the aspect of kind of having more safe sponsors versus not, you look at the Overwatch leagues as an example, and they were going like super Disneyfied. Like they were literally on the Disney Channel. They had to have super safe sponsorships, and they couldn't necessarily take something like a Bud Light sponsorship and FTX sponsorship.
Alcohol stuff's based on average age for your audience as well in North America as well, isn't it? Doesn't your average age have to be above 21 for
the average age of the LCS is above 21. It's a general problem with League, especially in NA, is that less than 10% of players are under 18, which does kind of worry everybody about the future of the game.
Yes. That's also, by the way, one of the weirdest things to me about League of Legends, the game, is that if you actually didn't know what you just said, that stat there, most people would guess, oh, it's a game for kids, isn't it? Look at the way the broadcast set up, look at the champions in the game, like the designs of characters like Lulu. You would just assume everyone's 15. But as far as I know, though, true, but even then, that's more like just the anime, like dark element in it. Like, no, but the mad thing to me is this: people don't realize it's true, actually, that it's just that obviously the people who are like 25, they're just the vocal fucking minority. No, they're the unvocal majority, rather. They just don't. I think a lot of those people, basically, it's one of the reasons why like me and Monty's content always succeeded, that they don't really get served by the main broadcast. Like, I've always thought that was one of the weirdest things Riot did anyway. Because basically, my problem with Riot and business goes like this. Like I said before, I'm not trying to tell them what to do with their business. They can do what they want. But I sort of at least got the vibe before Tencent like kind of heavy-handed them behind the scenes and had bought all the shares, that they used to openly say in their like sort of PR releases, they would basically say, we don't do the esports side just to make money, essentially. We do it for, they would frame it as, how we want the game. Yeah, how we want the game to be perceived and, what people should think of it. Now, that all sounds great if you don't need to make money. Essentially, you're just doing it for whatever your level of control is. The problem is, when the Tencent people came in, I mean, it was basically just implied, like, no, this is a business, like, make money. Like, go out there and all the esports properties make money, do more events. So my problem with that is, like, we were always going to eventually have to become more serious and actually like try and actually, in this case, you're going to have to tap into the part of the fan base that doesn't have any current connection to the broadcast. I
think the LEC has done a little bit different on that in terms of like, broke away from the EU LCS kind of branding they ever had, and kind of like being Riot NA's bitch and like kind of being the second fiddle and all this other stuff. LEC, I don't think it necessarily went entirely serious, but it did diversify content. It made it less... and sanitary is not the word, but like less streamlined and less like airbrushed to be broadcast friendly. And I think that's
a bit more raw.
It's a bit more raw, but they've also done stuff like they've weaponized their players' personalities. They've done that with their talent as well, their external content. And I know that myself being 25, I'm sat there and I'm like, I'm actually more interested in a lot of the outside content. It gets me engaged in a way that a more, I guess, standardized broadcast wouldn't. And I think that's what I'm often looking for in broadcast nowadays.
Yeah, and I feel like something that's really interesting that's not necessarily talked about with engagement into the broadcast that has nothing to do with the broadcast itself, but has to do with the player salaries. Whereas before, when the player salaries were much more smaller than they were now, streaming was a much bigger relative amount of income. Yes. And now income from streaming might be 10% of your income if you're a big streamer. So there's no pro players streaming, basically. There's maybe like 5 or 10 that stream consistently, and they stream to 100-200 people at most.
Oh, has the actual viewership for the streamers gone down as well, like the big names?
I mean, a lot of the big names aren't even streaming. Like you'll have Afromu is still like a fairly big streamer. He'll still get decent numbers. Yeah, there's a lot of EU streamers. Yeah, a lot of EU players are streaming, but also the salaries are relatively less inflated there. But yeah, in NA, there are very few players streaming and the numbers are much lower. And that means that there's less sort of personality and less reason for you to actually care about these players. As an example, it's just somebody like Sword Art. You're paying so much money for him, but there's no content made around him. Like, I have no idea who Sword Art is. He's just some... like LMS.
There used to be stuff in some of the contracts where you had to stream a certain amount. So I wonder if that's changed, because I mean I'm not someone who's seen player contracts in NA, but I know that was a thing. Wonder if that's a change in the direction which the orgs want to go in as well.
That's one area, without going down a massive tangent, where like basically that was one of the areas where when I talked to a lot of LCS owners, they basically had to sort of like almost be like the adult in the room for the fucking pro players, because the problem is every pro player since about 2010, just when they do a negotiation, it goes like this: can I get the total dollar amount to be the highest possible? And then you go, yes, we can do that. And then they go, no, but I need it to be more than that. And you go, if I make it more, then I have to put in these things. Like you have to, stream 20 hours a week. You have to do extra sponsor. And then what they do is, like little kids, like just wanting candy instead of dinner, they just go, yeah, whatever, okay. And then they agree, right? And then
son of a bitch, I'm in.
Oh no, how outrageous they are is they'll take the money, and then when you go like, well, you're not meeting your deliverables, you're not doing the 20 hours, and you didn't do those, like what happened to the sponsor thing you agreed. They will then just be like, oh, but I'm really tired, and like, I have no time. And it's like, so basically basically, as far as I know, some of the owners like literally started almost like just not letting them have those deals. Like started telling some of them like, look, we'll start you off on this. Like we'll do half the amount, and we'll see if you can manage that. Because basically, the players would sort of promise everything and then not deliver. Because I mean, understandably, all they really want to do is play the game. They don't really want to do all the extra shit that feels like work. You know,
I think that's a problem. I think that's a problem.
It is.
So I think that's naive because, and I think that's naive not just for players. It's for a lot of people in esports in different roles. I mean, myself as a caster, I'm very aware that if I'm not appearing on content, if I'm not being active on socials, if I'm not making something which can sustain myself outside of a contract, if that goes tits up, I have nothing at that point.
Yes.
And for players, you need to have something to fall back on, and because that gives you bargaining power too as well. So you need to set up some kind of bedrock to work off of. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up where you're not really prepared for anything to go outside of what you'd expected.
Yeah, I feel like some of these LCS contracts should be sort of like tiered based off of, if you do this, like say as an example, if you go to Worlds, we'll pay you double. Like this Sword Art deal, 6 million. That 6 million could buy you a 4th place in the LCS. That's a very possible situation that we get into. And without having that money being necessarily tied to performance, there's also just less of an incentive to perform because Sword Art's going to get this money anyway. There might be a big problem that could be hard to fix, but it is fixable. But then what's the point of getting the effort if he gets the money anyway?
Yes. I will say that is one area that they actually did improve a little bit the last few years, which is, unless you are someone, like I don't know in the Sword Art case, because unfortunately, like TSM were just super horny, they had to have that player, as people saw from the off-season. But if it's one where it's like, there's not like an insane bidding war, because obviously, unfortunately, the bidding war means to win the bidding war, you probably have to just not have any limitations, to just give the guy all the money,
If it's perks, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically those players, they probably did just get all the money because unfortunately that's probably why that guy won the bidding war. But there's actually other people, like I'll give you an example. If I had to guess, I say that because I don't want to just reveal entirely. It's people like Jensen, they probably have very similar contracts where it's like a very nice base and a really high overall salary, but a lot of it's built into like, and you've got to get us to like the final of LCS or you've got to like go to Worlds. Like there will be like a healthy amount of the actual like bonus. Like that might be like 200k bonus for going to Worlds or something. So they have started to do that with some players. Again, like I say, it just depends basically if you can sort of skirt that because you're just so in demand. Like that, and that's, by the way, you'll never get past that. It's the same in sports. Like
to have, I mean, I'm kind of holding off a little bit on what's going to happen later on, just because I don't know what's going to happen going from. This is actually a thing which applies to all of these. Of course, summer LCS has such a horrid format in terms of preparing for teams. You have 3 best of ones in a weekend, preparing for obviously 3 different teams, and you're going from that to preparing for one team in 1 best of 5. And I think the worst thing you can be in League of Legends is be telegraphed because it makes it easy to prepare against, but I don't know whether that has been shown in the regular season yet. I think EG have a great read on the meta. I love what they do with their solo lanes. I think that they, playing stuff like the Renekton and Rise, Wukong Twisted Fate is another good example too. Like, it gives their solo lanes, who are absolutely popping off, agency at all areas in the game to just make game-winning plays, and they're very good at free-forming when they're doing that. Whereas I look at Dignitas and I'm like, your individual, you kind of feel like a bit of a mid-tier team that's gotten into playoffs, and that is effectively what they are. I think they're lacking some of that individual firepower, and I think that they don't have the early strength either, even in somewhere like bot lane, where maybe you can prey on someone like Danny, to really have an edge over EG, where they're just going to fire all guns at you in the mid game. And I think that this is pretty on the paper. The writing's on the wall. I don't think this is going to be a particularly easy one for Dignitas to upset.
Right, Yasukeh, I think what we'll do is, like Nymaera there, we'll make like the initial comments mainly about like the matchup itself, and then after that we can freeform and go anywhere on these two teams and the other team. So what are your thoughts on this matchup, Yasukeh?
Yeah, sounds good. I can't necessarily say enough good things about EG. I just love everything about their team. One big thing in the top lane is that we're seeing sort of playoff/worlds impact in the regular season. And he's generally been a player who kind of like coasts by on the regular season and then sort of ramps up. But we're seeing a really, really good play from Impact. Yasukeh is still just like destroying pretty much every lane that he's ever in. And this is honestly the perfect like GMing that I've really kind of seen, in the sense of you have 4 veterans and then a rookie in the AD carry role. And who cares about like an AD carry being a rookie? They don't necessarily need to sort of have any veteran power to be good, which is probably why Double Lift was able to have a career so long, because don't necessarily need too much of a
you don't have to be the smartest guy in the world.
Yeah, you don't need to be the smartest guy to play the role.
Yeah.
So yeah, like their team structure is really good. Danny at worst is a serviceable AD carry, and at best probably top 2, top 3. Really, everybody kind of looks in form on this team, whereas I kind of go looking at Dignitas and see they've kind of accidentally won a couple games against top teams, but I really just think this is the ceiling for them. They have just so many players that are just mediocre at best. Like, Aphromo is having a decent split. Acadian is doing pretty well, but like Neo, I don't see him doing really anything at all against Danny. Yasui is just going to get smashed by Yasukeh, and Fake God, pretty much same thing with Impact.
So the bot laners are a thing which I really want to touch on a bit more, because I think actually, like, NA just as a meta, I don't know why they're not playing Ziggs at all, but then I look at like Neo and his really high kill participation and stuff like that, and I think, wow, he should really be a Ziggs player if he's playing Ezreal, and suddenly like they play Ziggs and it just doesn't look very good. It does give you the power to like leave your support, particularly in the case of Dignitas, Aphromo is having a great split, like you're saying. You think, hey, maybe you can roam about, but actually they kind of need Neo to be on something like the Kai'Sa or something like the Kalista to look like a potent force in like stabilize their early game. And I think that's a real problem when Neo is behind in something like 80% of their games, like he's behind in CS, and I just don't think that's the individual brawn you need at this point. You're not going to have that same leeway of margin of error to team fight your way back into the game against top teams.
Like, I'll definitely give credit, by the way, to Dig. Like, as you said there, like, I don't know how they did it, but they did win way more games, even after they kicked Dardoch than I thought they would. Like, they had a couple towards the end they stole from people. So it's not like they can't win matches in the LCS. But I will say, I think this roster is mad lackluster. Like, when I complained about them removing Dardoch, it's not even like I'm hating on fucking Acadian. Like, to me, those players are, like, similar level. It's one of those stylistic issues. Like, the issue to me is this. If you had Dardoch, at least you had one win condition, which is you get him onto a strong fucking gank in jungle and he gets a couple of nice ganks off early in the game, and then listen, the game's not over, you still have to close it, but you have a chance at that point in time. Acadian's more just a usual team jungler, and the problem I have with this team is who the fuck's he jungling for? Like, as you say, in a matchup like this, every lane could be losing, every single lane, you know.
Which is why I think he's playing Zack and Kayn, because at least if nothing's going to happen because your lanes don't give you any opportunities, maybe you can team fight your way back with some super team fight jungler. It's just not going to work like that against like a stack roster like EG.
Yeah, I sort of see, like, if you built two teams, one around Dardoch and one around Acadian, I could see a team with Acadian being better. But when you're in these kind of teams, you need somebody to be the sort of like really selfish carry who wants to be played around. And that is not Acadian. And you have nobody on this team who is. Like, you need at least one superstar on a team to win any best of 5, in my opinion. And they just have not a single person who I could really see is maybe even like top 5. I think that this team is like sort of better than the sum of their parts, at least for their record standings, but like that's not going to necessarily translate into a best of 5.
Also, I think the point you made about how the meta's in line is a perfect point about Yasukeh particularly, because if you think about where he was last year, where last year he was being benched so they could use Golden Glue, because the perception last year was everyone has to play Orianna Zay and just fight at the dragon, whereas he is someone who plays, I mean, technically he does play Zay, etc., but he plays like aggressive champs. He likes to go roam to the side lane and dive all the time, which is, I mean, if you've watched his career, like, I really wonder who the fuck recruited him to EG. It's like, whoever it was, but maybe, I just heard, like, he went to Worlds or something, like, because they didn't look like they had any clue what he was doing. Then you look this year, though, like, as you say, the fucking meta is smacking this guy in his face. Like, he can be on his TF or Rise, any of that shit. And listen, he's already going to dive all the time anyway. So if you now again can go to the sideline, that's why I found it so weird that people were kind of down on Yasukeh. I can certainly see where his flaws lie. He's certainly going to have times he does, like, get over aggressive, give away kills. But it's like in NA especially, dude, he's worth his weight in gold because there's so few players can play that style, actually. Like, I actually do think that they're a real dark horse for this playoffs.
Oh, well, I mean, I think I look at what NA's kind of like managed to accumulate in its top teams, and like, I think it's really important for EG to show, and like, this is going to link into something which I'm going to say about TL actually when we get onto that matchup, but like, there are a lot of NA teams which are very reactive. They're reactive. They don't want to make proactive plays because they want to. They save their teleports. They save their big plays for the first big play that you make. But what EG do is they hit you so fast that they'll kill you with something like the Renekton Rise combo, like I was saying, before the teleport completes. So you just don't get to fight after that point, even though they might get their own leads through lanes. A team like TL. You got something like Yasukeh, which can force the issue in a way which reactive teams don't really have the tools to respond to, and I think that's really important because that's the kind of playstyle playstyle that will actually get you further internationally. And, NA really would like a good international result sometime soon because it's been lacking for a while.
Yeah, EG is just a team that has a very, very solid way of playing the game, and then they just play to it. And that's really all that you can ask, whereas all of these other teams they don't really have any kind of cohesive style. And that all of the wins, like as an example, TSM, a lot of the wins that they get just seem like it's just teams kind of like dying into them. And that it doesn't really seem like they're doing anything sort of proactive to win the game. They're just all reactive, where it's like, you can just look at this team as sort of a Yasukeh team, and every single champion that he's playing is a champion who gets prio and is able to play the map. You got TF, Ryze, Lucian, LeBlanc, Lee Sin. Like, all of these champions can sort of stomp the lane, which is sort of what Yasukeh is best at. If you have somebody who is the best laner in NA, you're going to want to play a good laning-oriented strategy, and then sort of transfer that lead over to other lanes. And the rest of his team is actually a team that could actually capitalize on that. Whereas, like, just an example, if you're trying to do a 1-3-1, you can't necessarily have a bad team around the 1-3-1 if you want to do any kind of slow push.
Sure.
But everybody on EG is more than serviceable enough to kind of play these more like concrete styles. They don't need to sort of do the just reactive group up for an objective as 5 and then just team fight.
So curveball. Do you think Dignitas would have a better chance if they played Soligo instead of Yasui? Because he has a different champion pool to Yasui, and we've got our issues with him. He plays stuff like the Ryze again. Maybe you can take that away from Yasukeh. Do you think Soligo would add anything to that team, or is it just kind of doomed either way?
I feel like Yasui
I feel like there's an angle there.
Yeah, I feel like Yasui looked like terrible when he first kind of came in, and he's slowly been getting a little bit better and like not have been bleeding out as much as he used to in the beginning. So from that angle, it just seems kind of a gamble to take the player off of the team, especially when the best thing you could possibly argue with this team is coordination. And the difference between Soligo and Yasui isn't enough to sort of stop the bleeding in the mid lane. I feel like both of them would just kind of get smashed. Maybe Soligo might possibly get smashed by like 10 CS less at 15, but it wouldn't necessarily be enough to risk getting rid of the coordination that the team hypothetically would have.
By the way, have you actually played against Yasukeh in solo queue?
I played against him with a couple times, and he just stomps me.
What do you actually think of him as a mid laner? Because obviously when people are hearing comments, like, and not a lot of them are from people who actually are like mid lane mains. So like put it this way, do you actually agree with the sort of general sentiment that like he is like a super high fee player, like he goes super high? Like basically, some people think he's like too abusive, I think, basically in terms of his playing style. Like they think he pushes it too close to the limit or something. Do you think so?
Well, like, I would rather have a player that sort of pushes it to the limit, especially when you have a team that has so much structure, than having a player who doesn't necessarily want to go for these risky plays, because especially since he's doing it when he's sort of like pushed so far on the map, like it's pretty much identical to my sort of play style, is that I can sometimes die like 10 times in a game. Yasukeh can sometimes die 10 times in a game, and it doesn't necessarily matter as much as it does for other players, because if he's dying all of the way pushed up on the side lane, then the enemy team can't necessarily respond by taking an objective. And so
Azael did a piece about that, didn't he? Azael did a video. Azael did a piece, a video on one of the deaths, which the community was like complaining about. So it's interesting you think the same thing.
I mean, basically, the point Nymaera is referring to here is that, like, this is how you know LCS really doesn't know what 1-3-1/side laning is. They still don't understand, right, that you can die in the side lane, and that isn't necessarily an overall net negative to what the team was trying to do. Like, they don't understand basically the premise of map pressure, drawing opponents to yourself. Obviously, sometimes even what your team can trade for on the other side. Like, they don't do the plus minus. That's one of the areas in League, by the way. It's still quite underwhelming as someone who's a layman. It's like, but you still have people saying stuff like gold lead with no context to it. It's like, and then you look into it, it's like a 3k gold lead, 1k if it's on the support. He hasn't bought an item yet, and then the other team had the better comp. You're like, why are we even saying this term? Like, if anything, we're just fucking like these. It's like we're putting red herrings out to our own viewers that are going to distract them. Like, you know what I mean? People, there's still so many aspects that are like, I feel like a lot of nuance is lost on the broadcast. But you're right, actually, Azael did try to correct, like, to fans that he's not just because he died doesn't mean it was like terrible.
Like the extension of the play works out, and
yeah, like,
you know.
there's sort of this kind of macro play that I'll make in solo queue games, like with Tryndamere, that kind of is the sort of extreme example of this, is that I'll push the first 2 waves and then invade the enemy jungler and try to kill them within their jungler. And even if it doesn't necessarily work, I'll force them to back, I'll force their flash, there'll be 3 camps down, and even if I die, a 3-camp lead in the jungle is just always going to win. So even if like the scoreboard doesn't necessarily reflect what's actually happening, it's just a massive play to kind of like waste people's time, especially depending on what time of the game it is.
And there also, by the way, you've just found out the reason why people who are imports, particularly Koreans, come to LCS and then go, oh, I'll just get some practice in. And then some fucking cunt mid laner playing Tryndamere just comes and flashes over the wall or something. You're like, oh, my game's just over already. And they're like, I can only imagine them mouthing off the face of the planet. Like, well, this is allowed. Like this, you know what I mean? You don't even get banned for
every jungler, every pro jungler, like they just hate my guts. Like, it doesn't matter what they think about me as a person, but just like, they just can't stand playing against me.
Funnily enough, some people were playing Tryndamere mid in NLC recently. So it's cropping up in EU as well. In NLC,
the UK league.
NLC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to check
a couple
that
of games there. Yeah, there's a couple of games there. But like I'm trying to remember if it won, but it was there. So
yeah, it existed. Somebody thought it was good enough to play.
Yeah.
What do you actually think, both of you, though, in terms of like EG in the entire playoffs? Because obviously, like I said, they have the dark horse factor, at least not least because of that insane run. They were beating pretty much all the top teams. But as you said about like, the problem is this, like, we have never really seen this team in like a proper best of X, because like the spring season doesn't seem like like spring splits, it feels like it's a different team, you know? So like basically the question is, does that translate to best of 5 season? Are they actually the best LCS team? What's your vibe?
I mean, like I said, I think stylistically they're the best LCS team. The question is whether they are executing on that style to a level where you don't have a slow scaling team which just reacts to you, shuts you down in your first couple of plays, and then just like makes you feel kind of bad about life, and then scales into oblivion, which is what we've seen from TL at times. Although of course they've not had as much success with that recently. We've seen that with TSM quite a lot. Although, I mean, they're really helped out by the fact that Speaker is playing like an absolute monster right now, and he kind of ensures that they reach that point just through good individual play. I think that they've lucked out on their side of the bracket in some ways. I think that not having, you know, the TL, C9, TSM kind of side of it, who are, you know, very robust, very experienced in best of 5s on one side of the bracket, I think that's going to work out with them. Potentially they can slide past Dignitas without showing too much, and then potentially prey on a struggling 100 Thieves with their own, again, very aggressive early style. And I think that could stand them in really good stead, at least for getting to Worlds. In terms of winning the title, I mean, I have good vibes about them. The question is how many of the sleeping giants, or the old guard of TL, C9, TSM turn online. Is TL going to have Thorin turning up like, well, because obviously it wasn't in the last week, and we'll talk about that and whatever. But it depends on how many of these old guard are really going to ramp up for playoffs. Because I think in current form, yeah, sure, I think they are actually the best team in the LCS.
What's your vibe, Yasukeh?
Yeah, I think that at worst, anything that's not a top 2 result for this team is a failure. Like, they have such good sort of understanding of how they should play. And then also, going back to the point that I had before, they have 4 veterans who have been in many, many different playoff situations and had tons of success in them. And then 1 rookie in the best role to have a rookie. Like, yes. I don't necessarily think this team is going to have many issues in best of 5s, just because all of the players have sort of kind of had that experience, and the fact that they have such a cohesive playstyle is going to make them very, like, other teams may have beaten them in best of 1s, like Team Liquid beat them in a best of 1 in week 9, but when it comes to actual playoff series, having that sort of cohesive playstyle with all of these very solid pieces, if one piece fails, there's so many other pieces that can sort of like take up that mantle and sort of carry the game. And I don't think that even if they were on the other side of the bracket, I would still probably call this a top 2 team.
I just think it's better. I think potentially it's...
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, they have one of the freest entries into the finals, because I don't think 100 Thieves is really going to put up much of a fight against them. And Dignitas is probably just going to be an easy 3-0.
Sure. Oh, on the point that you mentioned as well, that you mentioned twice about how like ADC in theory is the role of all the like laning roles, that's the one you'd want the rookie to be in, especially by the way if they're working with veterans around them, etc. I think that's like a point that's really misunderstood. Like an example to me would obviously be when international fans look at the LPL teams. Like, mate, One of the things I found boring as fuck about MSI was people trying to like tell me that Gala's like the new Uzi I or something. It's like, you just know nothing about LPL, you fucking moron. Like that's
Gala.
yeah, he's like an okay player in the LPL. There's loads that are better in his position. He just plays the position and he's in fucking RNG for God's sake. Like, if you don't look good as an ADC in that team, what are you doing, mate? Like, so to me, that was just one of those ones where it's like, you guys, this is what fans always do. You're all commenting on the finger instead of the fucking moon it was trying to point at. Like, if anything, the point there isn't look how good Gala is. It's like, holy shit, LPL is so deep. That guy who isn't even one of the best at his role, if he just plays the champions that make sense in the meta and just does his job, even he can look world class. Wow, LPL is an amazing region. They just go, what? No, Gala is the Uzi. It's like, I can't win. You're the same motherfuckers who were telling me like, nah, mate, it was shit for all these years. Now you're going to tell me Gala's the truth. Give me a break. Like, so that's just one of those, give me strength moments on that one.
One thing which I said about bot lane and sorry, come.
Yeah, it's a similar thing with like, as an example, like Knight in TAS has been one of the best players in LPL, if not the world, for the past like several years.
Sure.
And just because he had one poor Worlds performance, everybody in the West who doesn't actually watch the games that he plays thinks that he's just such a mediocre player. But like, one tournament doesn't necessarily make a player.
Yeah, of course.
And you have to look at their entire sort of body of work, and the body of work of Knight is just amazing.
Sure.
Yeah, but I think like about bot lane in NA, it's really interesting how no one's really playing Ziggs, but everyone's playing Kalista, and it shows like there is like at least a mentality to play wrecking ball bot. Let's crush the 2v2. I mean, when you got players like Tactical, Sven, who are doing really well on that pick too as well, and even Lost is a significant Kalista player. It's quite interesting to see that LCS does want to play aggressive bot, does want to enable their carries to wreck through that turret, as opposed to what we see in a bit more in. I mean, obviously I see it all the time in the LGL because apparently we don't have aggressive bot lanes. But you just like you try and like always have available damage in something like an Ezreal or a Ziggs, and then like you just make sure that the rest of your map is then like starting to go around and nuke people with the Ziggs bomb on top of their head. So it's interesting to kind of see NA's take on how they want to play bot lane.
I actually had a topic on that we could do now. I could just squeeze it in here because it's relevant, which actually it's going to fit EG. Also, it fits the other matchup that we've got, because the other matchup is Cloud9 Team Liquid, which we'll talk about in a minute. But obviously that match itself took place in the last week, in the week 9 or whatever, right? And in that, this is the interesting detail. In that game, which was then followed back to back with the EG 100 Thieves one, but it's the one where 100 Thieves put the academy in, so no one really gave a fuck. There were basically two drafts that were very similar, and I'm going to bring them up here. Basically, both teams who were on the left-hand side did a draft that had Xin Zhao jungle, TF mid, Aphelios and Braum, and then it's just that, like, on the EG side, they had Wukong as the top laner, and then on the C9 one, they had Camille instead as the top laner. And then they both did that as the left side draft, and on the right side, you had people picking Jace, Viego jungle, Azir, and then whatever bot lane into that. Now, what's bizarre about this meta, right, is this is the point I was trying to make on the watch party that a lot of people might not understand is when the first draft of those two happens, the Cloud9 Team Liquid one, right, I remember thinking, this is crazy because on paper, hasn't C9 got like a way better draft here? And like, what is TL really hoping is going to like win them the game here? And that was the game where, if people don't know, C9 in making proactive players like force-fed Jensen like 5 or 6 kills. And even then they still couldn't win the game with the super-fed Azir. So the problem is this, right? This is the bigger point I want to make and ask you guys, because I'm just a layman when it comes to the draft. Then when I see the second draft though, and it's again very similar, like the left-hand team is going all those like powerful picks that obviously have mad agency right now. And then the right, this is the key thing though, the fact that the other team, even the academy team, is responding with very similar picks, the implication there is obvious if you're in the pro scene, which is that means that in scrims, these are the actual picks and the counters. Now, the reason I'm asking this is, I'd get why the teams on the left are doing those drafts. Like, for example, actually having Yasukeh and Perks on picks like TF make all kinds of sense. They can roam all over the map, they can destroy the game for you, they can go with the jungle or wherever they want. The one I don't get is the right-hand side drafts. Like, can you guys even theory craft for me? What is it, a Team Liquid 100 Thieves in this case? What are they thinking they're getting out of their draft? Like, how are they going to win the game against the other draft?
So, I mean, this is kind of what I was alluding to a little bit earlier in terms of TL being a reactive team. I think there are tools to reactively, respond with quite a high follow-up range. You've got your Ezreal that's very hard to deny from a fight. You have double teleports. But I mean, this is what we kind of saw against Team Liquid, and also why I said why it didn't work as well is that, it's all well and good saving your teleports for those plays, but if the person's already dead that you're arriving to protect, then the fight's just lost and you have to commit to that teleport anyway. I'm not a fan of what's happening in the right-hand drafts. I mean, I'm saying that straight up, which is why I don't really argue that hard for the right-hand draft. Like, you do have some potential to push in lanes. You do, at 2 to 3 items as you survive into that game, you can absolutely nuke someone like the TF out of position, the Camille out of position, or someone like that. I just feel like you're risking so much early that if the first play goes wrong, and you've then also used your responses to that too, game just falls apart because you don't have it for the next play when they're also off cooldown and your teleport's on.
Yeah, somebody of these champions in the sort of like Jace Azir comps are really easy to sort of get these kind of like picks off on, which is something that would do really well into the like TF Xin comp. Like this Jace Viego comp, I'm not even sure if it wins 2v2 into either Wukong Xin or Camille Xin. Like those are two like great champions in these kind of 2v2
won
situations.
top 2v2, which was kind of weird, but like that was the one good moment they had that game outside of Jensen popping off.
Yeah. I'd have to look at the specific situation, like depending on who sort of came in. But like overall, I see no real reason why this draft could actually be happening, and must have something to do with sort of like scrim meta, picking comfortable champions. Like Viego is somebody who like every jungler seems to just think is just the best jungler in the game, which is not. It's not terrible. It's not wrong, but a lot of these just seem like I'm going to pick champions that I like, and not necessarily having a sort of cohesive team composition.
Because basically the point I thought we could draw it into is, when you were saying about how they don't play the Ziggs bot lane, actually Nymaera, the bizarre thing is, it's not like NA is afraid of complicated drafts. That's the part I find weird, right? Everyone disses them and all talk, like even all the coaches on shows talk about the problems getting players to understand concepts like side laning, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll go and it does look like they watch LPL and LCK and they just draft their teams like these fucking ridiculous, like execution level drafts. Like, I can't believe some of the games I've seen. Like think about that C9 TSM Clown Fiesta from a few weeks ago, where it's like, mate, how hard are you going to make these comps to play? Like, the best teams in the world would have like times where they'd maybe fall apart with this. Like, to me, in the LCS especially, I mean, people made fun of CLG for this, but you make a simple fucking draft that the guy can play, So
what's really interesting about so I just had a look at like the pick order of the C9TL one again, and like, so they gave up the Jin's our first pick. Sure, like maybe you can pick something like a Trundle into that. Trundle's going to come absolutely storming into the meta because you can just keep him in a fight. You can make him, you can kind of reduce his tankiness. But you see, you lock in a Leona, which is Zig's preferential lane partner. You see an Aphelios Braum, and you're like, well, yeah, they're going to play a super defensive bot lane, but they also can't aggress onto us. How about you just pick the Ziggs there instead of the Ezreal and red pick 3, leave the Aphelios Braum to 1v2, let Leona actually go respond to these proactive plays across the map, and then also have Leona Ziggs combo later, which can reach the back line in a way that the Ezreal can't through the Braum. So, I mean, I'm pretty stumped on that draft myself. I feel like that's not a good read on the meta, which is also why I'm really favouring teams like EG, which just seem like they have it in hand. I think that Ezreal is not really an answer into the Aphelios 2, particularly, Aphelios Thresh, Aphelios Braum. I think that we've seen so many carries pop off in team fights. I'm trying to remember if Zen got the pentakill on that one. Danny's looked really good on it.
Game.
Yeah, because you've got so many low-range compositions which are diving into you. You can get a stopwatch once for a mid-game fight, you can flash out and then just turn around for things. And Aphelios will just effectively single-handedly win you the momentum of the game and just roll over the game. And I don't understand why people are thinking Ezreal is going to save you in that mid-game fight, because so often he doesn't.
Yeah, so many people just pick Ezreal as just like I want to be safe and not die.
Ziggs.
Yeah, it's like Ziggs has been in the meta for so long, and he's been really, really strong that I feel like if you haven't picked him up now, you're just never going to pick him up.
He had 2 games on the last patch. He's like 5 and 8 total in the LCS. I just don't get it.
Yeah, like so many of these people aren't necessarily willing to pick it up, whereas like Danny on EG is an example. He's shown that he's at least willing to play Ziggs. And that also is another boon for
that people like Reckless, Froggen, some of the certain Korean SKT back in the day, they were passive, but in like the best possible sense. That was they mastered that. And the whole point is they're going to smash you. You have to basically be the absolute best aggressive player to make that style work against them. The problem with this case is Team Liquid isn't that team. And so as much as I have my flaws with C9, at the moment it looks like the game wants C9 to win the game. Like, I'll tell you what, even like what I said about Yasukeh earlier, I think here's my prediction for the playoffs. this meta is going to be what saves Perks, because individually he has had a lot of wonky games this split. But I tell you what, if you give him a whole bunch of champions, I'll read off his last 4 picks that he had in the LCS, right? So he played TF, LeBlanc, Yasuo and Zoe, right? That's all you need to know. Perks knows that he doesn't have to win mid lane. He is just going to go around the map killing every other fucking player on the other team. He's going to dive top lane when it's the right time. He's going to go and do bot lane dives. He's just going to try and win the map, as far as I can tell. And I tell you what, that's not a bad strength to fucking fall back on if you're playing the LCS. So I do feel like I can be confident seeing how wins this series. What do you guys think?
Yeah, there's so many things about it. And yeah, to your point, like it's so much harder to be a counterpuncher than to just be somebody who just goes in at first.
In the current meta, yeah.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things is that both Team Liquid and C9 both kind of had all these really weird roster shuffles and had all of these things that sort of made it to where it makes sense why they wouldn't necessarily be doing so well right now. But the difference is that with C9, it's pretty clear that Perks is honestly just kind of the worst performing member in many ways on Cloud9.
That's fair.
But he's also somebody that you can trust to do well in playoff series. Like there is precedent even within just this LCS season of Perks just absolutely running it down like in the lock-in tournament and then bringing it back up later. So I'm not necessarily worried about Perks in these kind of playoff situations. Whereas with Team Liquid, if there was no inside information that has sort of come out on what's happening with the team, I would think this is just sort of a plug-and-play roster. Like if Jenkins or if Alfari and Jensen were off for just completely different reasons than what has actually happened, I would assume that this team would still be able to be really good. Like they have the pieces. There's no reason that this team shouldn't be in contention for the title, but it just seems like this team is kind of like broken. Like Jensen is not playing to the name of Jensen. Like he's just in so many situations, just like playing so many situations wrong, and he's just like kind of super outclassed by a lot of these other players right now. And it kind of seems like this roster is just going to blow up in the offseason, and I don't necessarily see there being a huge incentive. Like I just don't think the desire and drive is there. I think one kind of
go down. You don't save it. It's just going.
Yeah, like one sort of like comparison that I would kind of give to in true Thorin podcast etiquette, I'm going to bring up Reckless in this situation, and that if you look at pictures of Reckless from spring of 2019 and the summer of 2021, like just compare those two pictures, and it seems like something is just going wrong in the team.
As in the vibes, he's not as happy or something, you mean?
Yeah, he's not necessarily like there's clearly kind of something that's going wrong to where like they're not necessarily in good headspaces.
Okay.
And it seems like it's kind of a very similar thing with Team Liquid. That there's
pretty,
so many things.
Pretty bleeding obvious with all the stuff which came out. Like that's got to go further than whatever comes up publicly.
Like in another universe, this team could be like top 1, top 2. This is the universe that like it's just not going to happen for them.
Which is why it's super interesting to me that you're talking about EG being such a stacked, like diverse carry roster where like if one piece fails, you can rely on the others. TL, you can't rely on like one of these star pieces to like be firing at the same time as the others. It feels like they're firing on like half the cylinders, you know? I do think that Tactical and Core JJ were the informed bot lane of most of this split until, of course, Sven and Vulcan really turned it on at the end of it. And then you got some other names like FBI, who's done very well. But as soon as Jensen turns on in the last week, Core JJ is not looking so hot. And that's a problem. Of course, they switched in junglers. Jungle support synergy is a thing, but when you're just losing in 2v2, that's not so great. I think the one caveat I will say for TL is that you need to be very intelligent to play the reactive style of play, to be in the right place at the right time. I think we've seen players like Speaker, again, do that really well and stuff like the Diana, just turning up to the right fight at the right time. And Santorin wasn't on form in that last week. I mean, he only had 3 games. You can't really fault him for that, which is why I think for this series, they're probably heavily outclassed, I would say. But you go down to the lower bracket against teams which don't have the same fundamentals, that aren't as just relentlessly aggressive and punishing you for being reactive. That gives them some time to ramp up, allow Santorin to get back into the groove of things. And I think that they could make a lower bracket run. needs to be some pretty sizable changes though, and I need to see that because Santorin is a notable, intelligent player. Armeo,
sure.
Armeo is an LCS standard jungler. I mean, I'm never gonna not say that. I just don't think he is. You don't think he has the skill set that Santorin has above him that would benefit this team. So that's the X factor. I just don't think it's going to be ready for this series.
Yeah, Armeo doesn't necessarily deserve a top tier spot, but if he was on somebody like Dignitas, nobody would complain.
Yeah, exactly. The whole Gregacadian thing again.
And I will even say, by the way, if you look at any of the teams, obviously it was mainly TSM, but there's a reason he's not a starter on Team Liquid. Yeah. Almost every team he's been on has the same story, which is the reason they pick the guy up and especially use him as a sub is apparently in like practices he's really good and he seems like a smart player, knows what he's doing, but it's just one of those ones where they claim like he just doesn't work in the official game or whatever. They may have like a brain fart every now and then. No, the other thing I'd say about this series as well is I totally agree with the roster angle. That's why the last few weeks felt so whack, because you keep looking at the roster on paper and you're like, dude, shouldn't like two of these players be able to carry some of these LCS games? Like, these are insane names on paper, but the problem is those aren't really the names that are in the server at this point in time. In fact, almost none of them are, quite frankly. Like, there's not really many players. Like, even when Alfari like wins lane, he doesn't look like he's connected at all to the team. Yeah, like if people used to diss him back in the day because he used to be like a monster in LEC and he used to sort of like not do much with that outside, that was more like, maybe he just had a bad team or something. This just looks like, with whatever the fuck they did with him in and out of the roster, changing the coach, like they've sort of like crushed whatever system they had in this team, because I also feel like that's how they ended up with these drafts. Like, I agree, it just looks like people picked a champion they wanted without really worrying about what the draft was, so that Jensen probably thinks, well, I've been playing without my real fucking jungle, so just give me a Zay. Like, I'll just be, I'll take that. Like, it doesn't feel like a team that I don't put it this way. If I could do like the lie detector trash truth serum test, they wouldn't pass this. Like, this team, they would just, they'd admit like, yeah, of course I don't think I'm going to win. That's why you're right. It's really the fact that they can go through the lower bracket still. Like, if anything, the format is actually potentially going to be favourable for them in that regard. Because if this was just like one and done, I wouldn't have any faith team that could go.
If they lose the first bracket, who are they against? Are they against Golden Guardians? I think they're against Golden Guardians.
Being as they were the fifth seed, that would mean that they play.
It's really weird because I'm actually not sure. It's like
I think
the
it depends on which team wins.
Right. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Normally, the way you do it is you flip in the second round. So if you dropped here, I believe they would play Immortals, I'm guessing, and then you flip on the second one. I think they would play Immortals. I think.
Okay, I mean, against either of the teams, I think you're pretty okay.
Either of them, like they're definitely going to get through that round.
That's the pick me up.
If you actually look at their summer split record, as far as I can tell, out of the top 5 teams in the LCS that included, they only have 2 wins against any of them, and those are 2 wins against EG. Aside from that, they have no wins against top 5 teams.
Wow, that is crazy.
There's 0 and 3 versus everyone but EG in top 4 teams. 2 and 10 versus the top 4.
And it's like these names on paper, like they can just out mechanic these lower tier teams. But against these top teams, like they're not a cohesive team that like they can't just win through their player strength.
Yep.
The other thing to say on that as well is like, even though individually I can give almost everyone a pass because of the fact that they're all working with like incomplete rosters, like Santorin hasn't even fucking played most of the year, like, you know what I mean? There's a reason you can give everyone sort of like a pass in terms of like don't judge their whole career on this like last 3 weeks. The problem is when you talk about them as a team, you have to just like, there's no excuses left. Like, they're just a bad team. As you say, like that actually makes perfect sense when you say it that way, mate. Like, if anything, they maybe could have won the odd best of 1, but they haven't looked like a top team for a while. Like, they've just cruised into the playoffs. I mean, they're actually a team where if people go and look it up, it really helped them that this format combined the spring and the summer. Now, you can obviously argue the counterpoint if they probably don't do all these crazy roster moves if you don't have this stupid format. So it's probably like little of column A, little column B on that one. But yeah, I think a TL feels a bit like even with that low bracket run, I don't really feel like they're going to come back and be like a danger to win the title. You know, they can maybe get the last world spot. You have to go through TSM, C9, EG. 100 Thieves, I think they can do. I think it's even that. I think that's looking a bit rough.
Yeah, I think C9 and EG are kind of locks for Worlds. And then it's really just a question of Team Liquid and TSM. Like, I favor TSM in that kind of situation. But knowing TSM, like, who knows what would actually happen with that team? Like, there's too many unreliable pieces on TSM to really kind of be confident.
They've really
about
ramped up through the split, though. That's the one thing. They've been ramping up continually, so they could be a threat.
Yeah, but like also I still, even though they're winning more games, I still see so many of these situations where they're winning because the enemy is making just super, super low level mistakes that just shouldn't ever be made. And it doesn't necessarily feel like TSM like deserves a lot of these wins. I feel like when so many teams play against TSM, they just look at the name TSM, and then all of a sudden just so many things are just thrown out the window. Like there's that kind of like big boss aura that teams fall into.
Oh, absolutely. Put it this way, even when TSM isn't actually the best team, they always have that vibe of like, oh, it's the match of the week if you're playing against. I agree on that one. Yeah, I think it's definitely against. One thing I would say is this is like, there's a principle here that a fan might not necessarily understand. It's more of like a competitor's mindset angle. It goes like this. So in the same way as people who are chokers, so this actually might be interesting if you're an LEC fan and you're thinking about Rogue at the moment, because they've done this a lot. Chokers, right, show that it's not like when people talk about confidence as though it's like, you know, that's the precursor to what you do. I've always thought it's the other way around personally, because I'll give you an example. When Rogue has choked in playoff settings, it's always when everything actually should be giving them confidence. They have like an amazing regular season record. Everyone's telling them they're the best team, you know, the players are among the best in all those awards every fucking split. They're going into a match they're favoured in. Like if confidence was something that was the fucking horse before the cart, then in this case they should have all the confidence, they should win the game. The problem is though, because they themselves know they fucked up a bunch of those scenarios, they aren't confident to win in that situation, right? Yeah. The flip side of that is what you get now with Cloud9 with Perks, which is it doesn't matter how many best of ones you lost. It doesn't matter that Perks is in bad individual form. If you are Perks, the reason you will always be confident, no matter what the individual games, you've done this 1 million times. You've been in a billion clutch scenarios and won. You've even, if you remember all the stories about G2, part of what was genius about the way they used to meme was, loads of what they were saying was true, by the way. They would actually be inting the fuck out of a bunch of scrims at like a Worlds and MSI. But then in the game, obviously they had the mental reset. Like, that is, if people don't get it, that is like probably the rarest mental like fucking strength you can have in the entire game. Like basically to know that even when you're playing bad, you can still win the game. That is the ultimate confidence. Like that's the ultimate fallback position, isn't it? And unfortunately, only one team, in my opinion, has got that quality, and that is Cloud9 with Perks.
So, I mean, like I said, I'm a huge rugby union fan, and the teams which have historically been dominant have had that grit, and they've kind of like, oh, you honestly like you forget how to lose. So if you think of the All Blacks and the Wallabies too, Australia, you know, I mean, I support the Welsh rugby team because I'm half Welsh, and I think we lost something like 4 or 5 games on the trot to Australia, which were like all in the last 5 to 15 minutes.
Right.
Like all those things come in, and part of that's about being really scrappy and just making sure that the game is just not clean and it's not going to script and you're not really allowing people to play their own game. And, you know, a lot of these are very transferable things between that and esports, because the mentality of competitive sports and esports does transfer in that way too. And there does become a point where you just kind of like forget how to lose because you've just been in that situation so much. And that's where the boogeyman kind of comes in. That's where the whole, TSM raid boss kind of comes in, because you've just seen it happen too many times before.
Agreed. Right, let's do it then. Let's talk about some of the other teams. So, how about this then? Since we already started the TSM convo, let's do it. So, Yasukeh gave like some initial thoughts there. Right, Nymaera, I'll just say this, right? I'll actually do, listen, I don't normally give a flying fuck what TSM fans do, but I'll actually play devil's advocate for one moment. And I'll just ask this, right? So, I actually basically have made a very similar point to the one Yasukeh just did there over the last, I would say the last year, because it was particularly summer split last year where I really noticed the same trend, which is when they're setting up for like a dragon fight, it does look sometimes like the other LCS team just like thinks, oh, well, this is TSM's fight to win. I better just give them the kills. And you're like, holy shit! Like, what was the setup here? Like, did you really think we would get that kill? Also, people just panicking when the first kill happens. Like, I've had a similar thought. The problem is this, right? To a fan, especially an idiot, that sounds like you're just hating it. It's like, oh, so even when I get kills and my team wins, it doesn't count, and you know it's the other team's fault. So it's going to sound like you're being unduly harsh there, right? What's your perspective on this, Nymaera? Like, is there is there something TSM's doing well that's getting them in this situation to get these kills? Do you also see weird deaths against them? What would you say on this one?
As always, it's a bit of both, because I think when you look at champions which Power of Evil play and champions that Huni play as well, like, they play champions which punish mistakes very hard, which means that simple missteps become huge problems very, very quickly. So you look at Huni when he's really far ahead on Jace, or when he was on Nocturne as well, I guess that was another thing, and I guess if you allow like Power of Evil's Cassiopeia to just go like run off rampant around the side of a team fight and stuff like that, they're really good at punishing that, which means that when you are playing against teams which are not as polished, anything which might pass against another team, just because of the way that TSM play, it does feel like they punish simple mistakes just due to what they're picking harder than another team might do. And I'm not sure teams necessarily understand that heading before objectives, and they think, oh, maybe we can just sneak one away. Well, that's actually more dangerous against what TSM do. So it becomes more obvious. I don't really know, like... it is kind of difficult. So on the other side of it, you do look at the other teams which are playing against them. They have done this against some of the best teams in NA too. So you think,
yes,
oh, obviously,
absolutely.
when you're looking at C9 and stuff like that. But in some ways, C9 are almost like the worst example of this, because we know that they are hyper aggressive and they sometimes cut corners on the way to a big play. If you cut corners against TSM, they tend to play in a style which punishes that harder. So in some ways, I feel like a team like 100 Thieves actually is some ways a stylistically better matchup versus TSM when they're doing their really clean macro, when they're less about bloodthirstiness, they're more about, like, they have a really high first 3 tower percentage and stuff like that. They get the gold lane, they run forward with it, which is much harder to like break out of that chokehold because they don't give you the chance to actually fight back because they're just taking the turrets instead. So I think it partly depends on matchup in terms of, like you got your Dignitas, e.g. C9, which play for high kills. You've got some other teams which I feel like don't give TSM that kind of opening, but I'm not sure what your feelings are on that.
Yeah, come on, Yasukeh. What do you think, mate?
Yeah, so a couple things is like looking at the sort of like 100 Thieves TSM kind of like angle. That's just a perfect example of a lot of the losses that 100 Thieves has against TSM are those games where, remember one game where Closer was playing Olaf, and there were several times where he was just kind of face checking into the enemy when the bot lane had prio. So it was situations that he never should have played.
That was the Diana game where Speaker just rocked him early, wasn't it?
Yeah, and like those 2 early deaths in the bot lane, there's no real excuse to have those. Like they were just kind of completely like int. So maybe in sort of like that angle, it might, because I expect it to be sort of those 2 teams kind of vying for the 3rd spot. Maybe that doesn't necessarily happen in a best of series. And another thing about TSM is that they're really, really lucky that the meta has kind of shifted to where control mages are a lot better, and champions like Lee Sin, Viego, all of these kind of champions are out of the meta. Because if you ever look at Power of Evil playing like Lucian, Viego, all like Lee Sin, all of these other kind of different champions, he plays them exactly like control mages. Like the player Power of Evil, it doesn't matter what champion he's playing, he's going to play it the exact same way. Like right. I saw him playing Lucian, playing Viego, and he's not harassing, he's not trading HP in these matchups, and then oftentimes you can just get outscaled by these other champions, because if you're playing Lucian, you need to be playing for the lane. Whereas like looking at Power of Evil into somebody like Perks or Yasukeh, I feel like it's not necessarily going to be as easy for him to win, because Power of Evil can do all of his control mage stuff and be very, very comfortable on that. But even if Yasukeh or Perks don't necessarily win or have that kind of like control mage versus control mage matchup, they can just play the map. And that's not necessarily something that I see TSM doing very well into. And I really kind of feel like TSM's strongest parts are their mid and jungle when they're on their sort of champions, but the rest of the pieces are very big question marks, and I can't necessarily, like, on a good day, they might even win the LCS, but like, there's just so many bad days and so many times to where just random things are happening that they don't necessarily kind of deserve these kind of leads. But the champions that they do pick, the way that they sort of just naturally play, is set up to kind of like pounce on those mistakes that they have. And especially, it's just, I feel like so much of this team is just Spica. Like Spica is just far and away like
right now.
one of the best junglers. And like looking at his pro views, like it seems like
his map moving. So I got pro view this split, and I was like, which was dubious decision given it's LCS sometimes, and I'm looking at CLG and I'm like, oh gosh, this is not so great. But Spica's map movement is pretty insane actually. Like he's taking so much information.
It's something as simple as like he's clearing pretty much as optimally as you could while looking at the rest of the map. So I kind of see every kind of play that TSM makes. I'm gonna probably give more credit to Spica. Whereas Sword Art, like, it doesn't necessarily seem like he's ever been properly integrated into the team. And like if you look at his kind of gameplay, he's just kind of always looking at his lane, whereas Spica isn't. So I'm wondering if it's like Spica feeding Sword Art information or like how that's necessarily working. But like they don't necessarily seem like a good super macro team, which is what you would want to have gotten Sword Art for.
So I'll tell you what's really interesting about that. TSM have only played one game of Thresh as well, which is a super high priority support right now. And if you're going to be a good Thresh player, you have to be a good team player as a support. And I wonder if that's indicative of what you're saying there.
Yeah, it does seem like it's actually banned a bit versus them.
All right. Yeah.
Especially in later weeks.
Right.
Fair enough. I do know back in the day that was definitely a Sword Art champion. I just don't know if he plays it at the moment, obviously. One thing I will say is, like, first of all, you're absolutely right. Like, a key thing to mention in contrast to the last split is absolutely, think about how much we've already sort of dissed C9, Team Liquid. No one knows what EG will actually be like in the playoffs. I have to say, this is absolutely a split TSM could win. Like, you look at they're going to be right in the mix there, and they wouldn't be like a massive underdog against anyone. Whereas in spring, like, I would have absolutely, in fact, I basically did. I would have basically just bet my life every single fucking playoff series they were playing against C9 or TL. Like, I'll take the other team. I even took TL when they had the fucking sub jungler because they were just a much stronger individual team back then. Difference is this split, no, absolutely, they've got a pretty good chance to win. I also think, by the way, a massive a positive for them is what you're saying about Spica. Like, if I look at the teams that are going to be potentially in the final, in the contention for Worlds, Spica's actually the most reliable of all the junglers there. Like, I actually know what I'm going to get from him. He's even good from behind. Like, he's actually just a very legit player, I have to say. He's probably the best thing that happened to TSM the last couple of years. It's just that my problem is this. Beyond those players, like beyond Spica rather, I think the other players are all just like average to above average. Like maybe Power of Evils should be considered good, but like I don't think the others are like monster players. Like for me, Hooney just always ints too many times to be the player he wants to be. Like you're not the Shy, mate. Like the Shy, even like as much as he will, he'll still have a game where he'll be like the best player in the world the next game. Like that's not really Hooney. So my problem with them as a team is I just don't know if they're actually a good enough squad. I will say the meta's also somewhat pretty nice for them in general because I personally don't think they're drafting for the meta. I think they just pick champions they like as well. But look how many of the champions you're talking about literally fit Hooney, fit fucking, by the way, even lost, like he gets his Callista. So like they basically can get all the comfort champs in the actual meta now, which is fucking amazing for them. So they're certainly
so
a dark horse.
Coincidental overlap.
Yes, they're certainly a dark horse to win, go to Worlds, everything. I wouldn't take that from them.
I have a sneaking suspicion, actually, because this is there are some facets of TSM which have kind of, even with the changing rosters, managed to stay kind of true to them over the years. And you think, I think all the way back, like to season 4 and every time between then, like TSM have actually managed to be that one team in NA that's been really good at finding random fights when they're, they are contesting a dragon, which normally you think, oh, you're just kind of watching it go down, or Baron.
Yes.
But they're pretty good at like randomly sitting in a lane, waiting for a Syndra stun to hit. I mean, that was the big thing back in like with Bjergsen way back in the day. You just like randomly find one mechanical outplay in the late game, and suddenly it doesn't actually matter if you've entered a couple of times in mid and early game. You've got the good fight. I almost wonder if that's the reason why NA sometimes goes towards the ARAM, is because they've seen TSM do that over so many years, and it's been such a big kind of tool in that team's power tools kit,
Yeah, it's like similar thing you'll see in other regions is that every team will try to play like SKT even if it doesn't necessarily fit their team. Like so many teams trying to play around the AD carry when they don't necessarily have Uzi and LPL.
Sure.
Like that is a very common thing to see. Oh yeah, Gala guy like might be top of the world.
Definitely is in a tournament where his competition is fucking Doggo, Ghost, like just keep going.
Yeah.
Utapon was great, thanks.
Right, what about this then? So, the only team basically, because I don't give a fuck about Immortals and Golden Guardians, we'll just talk also about 100 Thieves, and I've got like a separate topic. Right, for 100 Thieves, as you kind of outlined, they're basically the reverse EG. They started off the split super well. Everyone thought, wow, they could win the LCS, they could go to blah, blah, blah. The problem is that was like 5-6 weeks ago now, and unfortunately, they do seem like the team that have like lost a lot of the heat behind them as a squad. Even individual players aren't looking as crazy as they were. Like, they would have, like, put it this way, when the split began, like, Abadagia would be an MVP contender, maybe FBI or something. Like, there's a whole bunch of players would be right up there. Where are they at the moment, Nymaera? Like, do you actually think in the playoffs it turns around? It sounded like you were pretty down on them.
Yeah, I am pretty down on them. One of the worries I have is that, they are one of these teams that try and crush you with early game, but they have a really low combined kills per minute. It's like 0.73, which is only slightly higher than TSM, who, we have our own faults with kind of playing too slow early. They do have really good control of how they get around towers and how they control lane CS too, just in terms of the stats which come out of that. But I mean, what we saw with the game versus TSM, where you've got Closer just making quite basic mistakes in terms of don't face check into bushes where you don't have control. When you're low level on Olaf, it can still be a problem. It feels like 100 Thieves don't have the same understanding of the meta they had towards the start of split, or maybe it's a case of everyone else catching up to them. But either way, it does feel like they have fallen off individually, like you were saying, but also I don't think they understand how they want to play the game, and that's a big problem when 100 Thieves, rather, their selling point was, we are good as a team, we understand how to play as a unit. They don't have that right now, so unless they show me like really big development over best of fives, I don't see why I'd trust them.
Yeah, in the back half of the season, they're 5-7 in their most recent games, and
Dignitas and Immortals, so they've lost to top teams as well.
Ultimately, the biggest thing that I see out of this kind of team is they just feel so bad for Someday. And that Someday has been so great for so long, but he just hasn't had a team that has kind of been like good for him. And now that he actually finally has a team that's somewhat good, like Someday has kind of not been very impressive this split. Like there's so many sort of wave states that he's just playing completely incorrectly. And whether it's Someday playing them wrong or his team feeding him the wrong information about, like, say, where the jungler is, and then he dies to a gank that he shouldn't. There are just so many situations in which Someday just doesn't seem like this, like, what his name would actually entail. And I feel like he'll probably bounce back at some point, but I don't necessarily see Someday, like, living up to his name in these playoffs. And Closer also doesn't necessarily look to be the like top 1, top 2 jungler that he was earlier in the split and even last split. Closer just seems like just having a lot of issues that I don't necessarily know what's going on, but it just doesn't necessarily seem like it's working out anymore.
Actually, let's do that one then. Actually, let's pick up the Closer topic and keep going with that then, because we can have some interesting conversation about that. If people don't remember, when this guy first joined Golden Guardians, he was mega hyped, but in theory with good reason, because he was doing kind of like, if you remember when Southmere was in SK, it's the same thing. It's like, wow, like high mechanical skill level, you know, non-stop like ganks all over the place, like player on a team where the team's probably going to lose, but you're going to look quite good up until the point where the team loses. The problem with that kind of player, though, is they can be the ultimate fool's gold, because what you do is you think to yourself, well, it's not your fault, mate, it's your team. In fact, because I can't tell where your mistake begins and theirs sort of ends, it's hard to know if you're doing anything wrong. So wow, if you were on a top team, you know, you'd be like winning the league, you'd be the MVP. The problem is that doesn't always happen. Like, you boost that player into the top team, you finally see what their flaws are. What would you actually say? What are the issues? Is it just a down year? There've been some issues? Because I have to say, ever since basically, even when they were Golden Guardians, but they became in that summer split last year, like potentially a contender, as soon as they actually got in a contender status, he didn't really look that crazy to me anymore. I was kind of a bit underwhelmed. I was hoping he was going to be sick, you know.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I think a Closer, and I actually can't think of many points about him, because, like, he just doesn't show up on my radar that much right now, apart from, Speaker stomped him. I guess Speaker played really well, but then also on the other side, I'm like, hang on, 100 Thieves are meant to be a top team here. What's going on? And, you know, I have some issues when, you know, you're crutching on Olaf when you're not playing Enchanters, because I think Olaf needs a couple of other things to really stabilize him in a team composition. So part of it's like, okay, maybe there's something to do with you know, the understanding the meta. But then, like, when you're dying on second buff to a Diana pre-6, that's where Olaf's meant to be strongest. There's some serious problems with the information flow in that game. So maybe that's something which, you know, isn't just happened to somebody, it's happened to Closer too. So I don't necessarily know how to triage this, because it's so hard to tell where the fault stems. But, like, you can tell there's an unconfidence and an uncertainty in the way that they play, which wasn't present when they were doing very well.
Yeah, and wait 1 second. Yeah, I feel like a big thing with Closer is that he was sort of had low expectations at a certain point, because he's just aside from like hype that he had earlier, he's just a Turkish jungler coming into one of the lower tier LCS teams in Golden Guardians. So a lot of hype sort of like could have been that he's performing way above his actual expectations. Okay, and he was actually looking like a really good player. But oftentimes, especially, there's nothing to necessarily prove that he could do that consistently. So maybe that was just a sort of like a high split for him. Like, they're maybe sort of in like a honeymoon phase, and like that's kind of just gone. And this might be a little bit closer to where he like normally is on standard, but the problem is looking at
We've seen, we saw that with we saw that with like Inori as well back in like Phoenix One back in the day. There's like,
I mean, Stixay went to MSI finals in his first split, and his career has just been downhill so far since then.
Is that a problem with developing players, or I mean, I'm not so like. Is that a problem with like developing players and keeping that form, or is it just like, oh, he's doing something right, we don't know what it is, we'll keep him in? You know, is that a problem with it?
The problem is when some of these names, like especially, it is like, by the way, almost an iconic problem with Jungle, as you noticed to some of those names that even think of contracts in his first split. They all have like a hot first split that's like, oh, this might be a new talent, and then like, dude, half the time they don't even make it to split 2. Like they're already dropped off. Yeah. Unfortunately, that usually says to me like you probably just got hit in the face with the meta, or people figured your entire style out, which is the most depressing one, of course. You know, like maybe people just figured out a key weakness you have, and then they can just copy and paste that over and over again.
It's actually why I'm so impressed with someone like Svenskeren, who's lasted as a top player for a heck of a long time, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it, jungle and mid.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there's some players hanging around, even in the LCS, I'm like, you've actually had a hell of a shift here. You know, congrats for, you know, lasting through that. I mean, even if it's not like, you know, still consistently top 3 or whatever, like at least keeping your name in the hat, and then being, if the meta changes something that you were familiar with beforehand, bringing that information back is really crucial too.
By the way, Yasukeh, I wanted to ask you, what do you actually think about Abedage as a mid laner?
I haven't necessarily like played against him much at all, but he seems like just an obvious upgrade to anything else that was in the team previously. But I don't necessarily like, he is a good player, but like when you look at his sort of like competition, like he's not better than he's not better at laning than Yasukeh. He's not going to have as many intangibles as Perks. Like he's just kind of serviceable. And I feel like if he's a good like top tier serviceable mid laner. And I feel like if the pieces,
I think his versatility is good. That's the one thing I'd say. Like he plays Karma when other people wouldn't. You know, he's got that.
Yeah, and like Karma Zen, Karma Viego, like 2 really, really great comps to play, so that he's willing to be sort of like unselfish. And I feel like Abedage could have easily like won this split if like his top side of the map, if whatever issues were going on there were fixed. I feel like this could be like a great team to actually potentially win. But like the issues with Someday and Closer are just too much to kind of go through. But Abedage could absolutely be a LCS champion in a different context.
I do think, by the way, he's an example of where like the new line should be on which players should go to LCS and which ones should stay in LEC if they're European. Because as I've told people, and listen, the whole Alfari thing has made me completely out on like superstar players going. The Perks one's different because I knew it was for a lot of money and potentially maybe they would like actually try and, you know, change their whole culture and bring over other people. The problem with the Alfari move is that's one of those ones where like it really could just be you're going for 1 year to get paid a lot and you have to win now, but in LCS. Right? My problem with that is some of those players probably should just stay in LEC. Like you might not like the culture clash. You also, by the way, you might just be on a worse team. My problem is this, right? If you're someone like Abedage, if you look at the team he was on in Europe, maybe he could have gone, let's say, like 1 space higher. Like maybe he could have been in like Fnatic or something, you know. But realistically, he was never really going to be on the team probably that won LEC. And for me, he was probably always going to be like a dark horse to make Worlds, but probably not a favourite to make it. So I think he's the perfect line in the sand of like, if you're at the level that he is, by the way, Power of Evil would apply as well. If you go to LCS, you could legitimately be like an MVP candidate and win and go to Worlds. If you stay in Europe, you're probably just going to be a pretty good above average mid laner that needs the perfect team around him. And the odds that you get the perfect team if you're in the 4th or 5th best org, not going to happen. So I think for me, his career makes perfect sense that he's gone to NA. Like, I even think the team that he's in is not a bad team. I do agree they're probably not the right team to win the LCS for this split. Unfortunately, it hasn't really looked that great, but he's a player where, in my opinion, he should stay like Jensen. Just stay for years and years and years and be the absolute best in this region if you can.
Yeah, I feel like he kind of has to hard commit to the region. Like, being in NA for so long, it's going to be like not very good for your skills as a player. Yeah, you're playing against random like mid Trinimers. Like you're not getting good practice in solo queue. I'm not good practice in solo queue for these pros. And like if he just doesn't make Worlds this split and then tries to go back to EU, I feel like that's just going to be a terrible thing for him. But like you said, if he just stays in NA forever, like I could see him getting a couple more Worlds appearances in his career.
I'm going to start educating people on playing Quinn mid with phase rush into Tryndamere. That's what I'm going to do. You've forced my hand.
Oh no, that's actually like I play phase rush Tryndamere too.
Oh,
so
gosh. Even
Like
worse.
I'm like 19-2 against Lucian. Like I'm talking to a lot of like collegiate players and collegiate coaches trying to sort of get mid Tryndamere as a counterpick to Lucian because it's just a completely one-sided matchup that you don't necessarily think would be there. And Lucian can very often be a first pick, so
things are
I am just gonna try to force that.
So I know that people do like reach out to One Tricks, and like there's people like Vigo V2 and stuff like that. But like if things are like serious counter picks to a regular blind pick, like for instance, I mean LeBlanc is one thing which people just don't really know how to deal with in a lot of regions. That can be like a super important thing to pick up. So I'm interested to see actually if any of these, because again, kind of going from the best of ones 3 in a week to best of 5, I'm actually wondering if with the amount of time that we've had, someone's going to pick up something weird, because that'd be add some spice into the place, which might be a bit dull meta-wise otherwise.
Right, I have another topic, and this is one where it's like going to completely out of left field. It's basically just a topic that I actually took from a different region. So Arnold, who's a guy who works within the Gen G organization, which is obviously an LCK team,
right?
He made a comment, right, on it was like a headline that was like an interview on Reddit, right? And I know this would like shock a lot of fans in the West, because sadly they still do that thing that most fans do, which is unless you know some of the more nuanced economic aspects of different games, different regions, you tend to in your brain just think whoever's in the best team, they probably make the most money. Whoever's the best player probably makes, basically it's kind of like a naive way of looking at sports, like, because in fields like sports, typically that has worked itself out, like it's quite rare that you can be a bad player and make a lot of money. You probably have to have like an incredibly marketable personality. But beyond that, yeah, like Lionel Messi probably makes among the highest amount for a footballer. The guy who's just an okay footballer probably makes like 100th of what Lionel Messi makes. The difference in esports though is like region to region, it can be different. And especially in my opinion, fans don't know how stratified certain scenes are. So an example I would give is this, right? This is where I'm going to come at this from. Arnold made this point that if you're players who are like, especially newer players in the LCK, for those players, a lot of them come from like poor backgrounds. He didn't say it overtly as far as I can tell, but the implication also is, since your parents might not approve of it, even if you don't come from a poor background, you might effectively be from a poor background because you might be disowned or sort of told, fuck off until you've done something. So these players, basically, he even used the phrase, like, it's life or death for some of these guys. Like, basically, once you've sort of committed to, I'm going to be a pro League of Legends player, the storyline really is, you're either going to succeed, which, by the way, could actually, like, fix everything. Like, then your parents might say, oh, now I get it, like this is a legit job. I understand why you didn't go to university. Or you'll fail, and at that point, you can imagine what the implied consequence are. You might have ruined your whole family relationship. You might be considered an idiot by your social circle, that you quit to go and play kids' video games and they all have a job or a degree, or, basically in Korean culture, you'll be very, very far behind. Like, one thing people might not know is the whole work ethic in Korean culture is so nuts that, like, I've heard that you have to have like a degree to do some mad, like just office level jobs that don't in any, it's not like, because the whole point is, what I'm making the point of is, it's not the skills, you need a specialist skill set. It's just that they've basically made like an arms race of getting a degree, and every fucker has one. So what I was going to bring up here is, not only should this contrast very harshly for Western fans who think the game's different, but since we're talking about LCS, half the problems in LCS are the opposite version of that. It's almost like first world problem level shit. When people are like, well, the problem in our region is, someone like Doublelift doesn't have to keep playing because he can just go and stream, and then, oh, this guy over here, well, why would a young guy want to practice all the time to be Sticks here? Why doesn't he just try and be Tyler 1 or something? Like, you hear all these arguments made, right? Now, listen, I'm not saying, like, I'm not doing the thing like my mom would do as a kid, like, eat those fucking carrots because some kid in Africa wants them, because everyone knows you just say, right, we'll fucking box them up, ship them off, and he can have, we all know the smart Alec comeback. So I'm not saying to these LCS players, you should be like the Korean ones. But if you contrast the cultural aspect, it makes a lot of sense that LCS is so far behind, has so many problems fixing them issues, has problems getting the talent through. Like, you're not really ever going to make a similar scenario.
So I think what I would say is that if you think it doesn't exist in NA and EU, it does, just at a lower level. It'll be somewhere like around like going into the Amshell. Because I say this because I was cast. So I cast in the UK scene as well, like the tier 3 stuff. And in the finals, there is literally a player who was going into the finals, and their parents were not very positive about it, and then he won and he got MVP, and he was like, and there was a really good storyline with that, and honestly, congrats to that player. They did really, really well. But like, this is at the amateur end of things too, just about to cusp into professional. The line will happen somewhere. The question is, where that is. Obviously, in Korea, that can be higher up, where it's like you have to have like full on living wage, you need to be at the top level. At that point, is it not worth it? I'm just wondering, like, if it's more of a case of where the level is, because I mean, it can apply in plenty of other things too. I mean, for myself, you know, I have to consider going full-time casting, drop out of education this year, and that's something which I've been thinking about. Very different situation. And then it's a kind of, there's a lot of other factors going into this. Like, you kind of can get away with it if you're a student for a bit, if you're good at managing work-life balance and just want to tank your grades. And I know plenty of people did that. I'm actually fairly sure that even Crepo talked about that back in the day, actually thinking about it. I remember an interview where he was saying...
It was basically the excuse a lot of people did, especially before you had the living wage. Obviously, you just try and go and get your loan, and then on the side, you're really just waiting to quit because you hope you get good enough at the game. Yeah, of course.
For sure. But then, like, then you know, I mean, there does have to be a point where you have to fully commit to it because everyone else is fully committing to it too. And whether that is taking a year out and doing, you know, hundreds of journalism pieces or casting hundreds of games, I mean... I probably spent about 700-800 hours casting in the last year, more than that even. I don't know actually how many things I've done. Like, sometimes you just have to put it on the grindstone and say, look, I have a time limit now. After this point, maybe I'm kind of pushing too much on the good graces of whoever's, you know, whatever's supporting you at that point. So yeah, I think that maybe at the top level, there's a bit of lackadaisicalness, but that line will be somewhere below that. I'm just not sure where that is because, of course, I'm not in that scene.
What do you think, Yasukeh?
Yeah, I'll kind of bring a point that's like outside and then kind of bring it in. The concept of like being able to stay up for a very long time. You'll generally hear that like you can't stay up for more than 3 days, more than a week without dying. But there's so many like anecdotal experiences of people actually doing this. And the thing is that with all of these sort of studies that look at this, that they pretty much just take somebody and force them to be up. But there's no real reason or drive for them to be up for that long.
Right. Yeah. So it's not like, for example, you know, the guy who's like making all the money on the stock market, pro poker play. Yeah, the angles where, you know, you'd be engaged with it, basically.
Yeah, or somebody in war, right? Battle of Thermopylae, up for 3 days. Like, they were able to live in such a terrible situation for 3 days. And it's like, these players don't necessarily have that sort of like drive to do
the fire under the ass,
Yeah. So it's all a matter of like degrees, but like... no players can really kind of do that Korean mindset because they just don't want it enough. Because there's not really as much of a reason to do
Nothing's
it.
On the line.
Like, there's no skin in the game. Like for Korea, it's like life or death, basically. Like you either make it or you're just an absolute abject failure in all aspects of life. Whereas in America, if you fail, like you also have, even though it's thought of that esports is more accepted in Korea than it is in the West, more often than not, esports players will have more support from their parents.
Yeah, it's the opposite, functionally.
Yeah, in the West.
Yeah.
So you're not really in a situation where it's like, hey, I have to win this tournament or I'm not going to eat the next day. So, like, without really having that drive, I don't necessarily see any of these players kind of really getting to that next level. And I don't really think there's any solution for it. Like, all of the solutions in NA are things that are just so deeply embedded in the general culture that you can't really have any solution as an LCS team or as the LCS organization in general. Like, there's not really anything you can do to fix these problems.
By the way, I'll give you... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine, go.
Basically, I'll give you a very quick mad anecdote that actually I got from Vizichachi in this interview I just published with him, where I forget which one of them was, but he had 2 Korean junglers at some point in Unicorn's Love. He had Move, the guy who played in LCS. I think it was actually Move he was talking about, and he had Horo, the old school guy from actually like T1 years and years ago. Basically, it was when he had Move, right? He basically told a story, which is mad depressing, which is that even though they had like a translator for this guy, like essentially, the Koreans sort of felt too awkward to constantly be asking for the translator. So what they would do instead is they'd sort of just like nod and say yes, but you could sort of see behind their eye, like they've glazed over, like he wasn't listening to what I was saying there. And the joke I made was like, yeah, but what's mental about that is, mate, you had that problem with him in EU LCS effectively, but he'd already played like an entire year in LCS. So like, that's how mad the dedication of these fucking players are. Essentially, a player went to America, was on a team where they were speaking English. He's the fucking jungler, and he was willing to go like, look, rather than get kicked out of the team, I'll just have to pretend I know what they're talking about and just literally on the fly, just hope I can figure this shit out. And by the way, he wasn't even terrible when he was in LCS. He was like half decent, if you remember. He was on that Gravity team. So it shows the different mentality.
First place in the regular season one time as well. Yeah.
Because if you remember, like if you were to take a Western player in that scenario, Dude, you wouldn't be hearing this story like 4 years later in an interview. You'd have heard that 24. They'd have made that excuse explicit from day one. They'd be like, I can't stand them. You know, the pressure's too much. Like, I'm not saying again, like, I agree with Yasukeh. You can't basically like simulate this. It either is life or death or it isn't. You can't just go imagine it is, you know. It's the same reason why, by the way, it doesn't matter how many best of ones you win. You can't really know what it's like to be on the stage at Worlds until you're there. You just can't know. The problem is, though, like, and if you essentially... It'll sound harsh, but even if Western players were equally as skilled and the teams were equally as well coached, that one factor, there's a reason movies are built around that as the intangible. Like, that one factor can be the reason why you're the world champion and the other guy's just a very good player, you know?
And there are always exceptions to the rule, because then, of course, you can mention, move at that point. But then you think about actually when Piglet came over to NA, I think, Team Liquid were trying to hire translators and he wasn't, like, engaging with it very well. And obviously, again, like, I don't know. I mean, I only know what the video portrayed of it. From that sense, it kind of seemed like, even though this someone who has been at the very top of the game, was very motivated to be like that, couldn't bring that same drive to the LCS. So, yeah, I think that there are always exceptions to the rule. And that's why you do see some people who just, like, absolutely, even someone like, probably someone like Forgiven is probably, like, a good example, actually, in terms of, like, just how he just kept coming back and he just kept trying to make things work and bringing that fire and that passion to the game. Now there are always exceptions to it, but the question is whether that's an exception to the norm or something which you just like see in an entire league.
By the way, I'll even loop that back in. There's another reason I've even told some players, LEC players, like, it's not the time in your career to go to LCS now, mate. It's because I also tell them the same thing. I tell them, look, right now, because you've never had millions of dollars, it sounds like if I put $2 million in your account at the end of next year, that will make it all worthwhile. And I tell them the problem is, though, if you've ever had money, it doesn't work that way. It's only awesome if you make the money also doing what you like. Like, if in this scenario, the choice is, because this is the real sad part, most of them aren't going to Team Liquid or Cloud9. They're probably going like to 100. They're probably going to a mid-table team who's hoping they're the upgrade, right? The difference is if you go to a mid-table team and you really do get there, get the millions of dollars, but then look back at LEC and go, shit, I might have actually gone to Worlds if I'd stayed in that team. That's actually going to fucking be a mad dampener. It doesn't matter. Like, you can't keep looking.
Febiven replied.
Very similar example.
I wonder if that's a factor. Yeah.
Oh, no, put it this way. If you asked him now, I would guess, no joke, he would say, I should have just never gone. Like, it reset my whole career. It changed people's perception of me. People might have even thought I was only in it for money at that. There's a million sort of spin-off second and third order effects you won't think through at the time. Because obviously at the time, you're just thinking, is there a way I can get all this money,
Yeah, and he was known as one of the biggest tilters in solo queue. Like, the solo queue just mentally broke him, and he just couldn't deal with it. And like, a lot of that could also just have to do with the sort of like reputation of that kind of happens. So a lot of teams aren't necessarily going to take him, but maybe he's just not a fit for NA solo queue. So he should just be in EU. And if he never went to EU, then maybe these problems wouldn't have actually happened.
I'll also say, by the way, on the flip side, that's why, in my opinion, if you're like an import from a better region, I actually don't care what you think about solo queue. Like, if anyone knows, over the years, Jensen many times in interviews essentially just said, I don't give a fuck about solo queue. I barely play it unless I have to. Now, I never hated that because he would still, at the time, always perform in LCS. He was still good internationally. Like, he'd maybe found some mental way around it. But so I don't expect you to love NA solo queue. But I tell you what, if you're one of those foreigners who goes there, Someday, Core JJ, some of these names, if you go there and you always do play your amount of solo queue and you're still diligent, even though you know it's shit, like, I have insane respect for those people. Like, you are just on another level, dude. Like, however someone like Core JJ and Someday mentally reset every year and don't sort of mould over it, like, it's just very impressive, I have to say. I don't know how they're doing it.
Well, you look at like was it Sven and Vulcan who were like doing to just like look with super tryharding solo queue, and hopefully we'll get people to like follow our lead. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that there is, and again, like, I know you're talking about it's kind of hard to combat so many of the ingrained issues with NA's professional circuit and the attitude towards the game, but the fact that there are some people who are willing to just, pick up the standard, walk forward and hope people follow in their lead, that helps. The question is whether that becomes a wave, and it hasn't yet. I mean, actually, that's a good point. Do you think that is something that could happen, or is it just that ingrained?
I feel like it's something that could happen in like a microcosm of one specific team. Like, if you have a certain group of players and a certain coaching staff and like just certain things kind of the stars align. Do you think it would affect solo queue
as a whole in NA, or?
No, there's just too many things deeply ingrained in the issues of solo queue that there's so many things that Riot could do that I've talked about before, but there's just nothing that any individual team can do to really improve solo queue. There is just the obvious example of like, if all of the professional
who's a challenger player, even this weird angle that you might have some like interesting matchup information. But you basically were telling us before we started the show that you actually have the piece of content you're working on at the moment. So can you tell us the gist of it? And then basically from that, there's an abstract sort of angle we can spin out and have a discussion about. So what was it you're working on at the moment, Yasukeh? I think it just froze right at that moment. There we go. Right, go ahead now.
So the piece of content is basically the Niles question, how stats can lie to you. Every team sort of wants to try to play Moneyball, is the movie where there was this one baseball analyst who took a team that had no budget and brought them up to way higher than they were using some kind of sort of like statistical analysis.
Sure.
And you kind of see every single team and like GM who doesn't actually really know anything about the game. And also the sort of like the pleb fans also kind of take this sort of statistical analysis, because stats are something that people who don't actually understand the game can use to think that they actually know things about the game.
Yeah, of course.
So just one example is I know there are some teams who have hired people for their staff. There's like 2 people for the job. There's one person who is a grandmaster/challenger player who has a ton of information about the game, has some experience teaching, coaching teams, and then somebody who is a statistics major student or graduate who is gold and has all of these nice fancy graphs that actually don't say anything about the game or would be useful at all towards the LCS team. They'll hire the person with a nice fancy graphs because no team can actually really determine whether or not somebody has game knowledge, whereas all of these nice statistics look very good, and that'll make people kind of think that that person actually has some value where they don't necessarily have it. Going back specifically to the point about Niles, is that he statistically is the worst player to ever be in LCS from a statistics point of view. But when you look at the opinions of experts like Dom, LS, etc., that they've said publicly, is that Niles is much, much better than the statistics actually show, and that there's actually some sort of like intention there with his gameplay. And there's a really big common theme within the LCS is a lot of players will be intentionally passive to make it look like they're not losing the game.
So they don't get blamed.
So they don't get blamed, and so they're able to keep their spot for the next season. They don't want to necessarily be the worst player on the team so that they don't get replaced.
I'm guessing the implication is he wasn't doing this even when he was on a losing team, right?
Yeah, so Niles was on a losing team and he wasn't afraid to look bad. He was doing everything that he could on the worst team in the LCS as a top laner, trying to get these leads and make sure it did not necessarily like look bad. It didn't necessarily look great, but the intention was there. And it would be much better to have a player who's actually trying to make these leads than somebody who is just playing back, playing passively, never flashing in for a kill that might actually win the team fight. But when the team fight is lost, it doesn't look like they were the ones that actually caused the mistake. And so that's the rough gist of the video, is that both LCS orgs and fans often just hyper analyze stats and then not necessarily look at the intangibles, because the only people who can look at the intangibles are people with actual game knowledge. And that's such a small amount of people. And the people who do that are also focused on other things, whether it be like playing for a team or just grinding out their own solo queue or doing these other things, that they're not necessarily the ones like being just the reply guys on Twitter or just responding to Reddit threads.
Right, so Nymaera, the good thing there is obviously we don't have to literally talk about Niles and Golden Guard. It's a pretty good abstract premise, because his point there is like the stats can be misleading. You could in theory look bad, but be doing something in the game that still benefits the team. Where do you want to go with this, mate?
Well, I mean, so I cast a lot of LGL stuff, and immediately there's a player which springs to mind, which is in exactly the same situation or was in the early split, because there are players who will die to put themselves, or trying to put themselves into good positions. There's a jungler for a team called Axis called Hoglet, who was playing a Diana game into a team which was basically just like stomping every single lane. He was playing jungle, and he'd be doing these like Metal Gear Solid plays, trying to walk into the enemy jungle, trying to get an angle towards a team fight to get the unseen ultimate, and he got shut down every time, and it looked a bit awkward. But no one else was making the plays to actually set up the team for success. So, I still value that, even though it won't turn up in the stats. Funnily enough, actually, in terms of talking about the game knowledge and using stats, So I've done a couple of caster workshops with, people who've worked on the LEC and stuff like that. Interestingly enough, if you're a color caster, the person who's meant to analyze the game, you are actually meant to bring less stats than the play-by-play because they throw them to you for interpreting it and analyzing it. The truth of stats because I used to do physics, so I did a stats physics module. Interpretation of stats is the only thing which matters about stats. The numbers themselves will always lie to you if you make them lie. There's always a mechanic to do that. The interpretation is infinitely more important than the numbers themselves.
Yeah, I have a great way of phrasing that. I always say the stat should be the question, not the answer.
Yes, absolutely.
Because by the way, without making a big tangent, right now in the world, I'd say the majority of fear comes from people just not knowing how a stat was calculated, but being told that the stat is the answer. And if you, as you say, essentially, as long as you can fuck with the metric enough, and basically what you're ranking it by, you can make anything sound bad or good, no matter what the stat actually is. Whereas the real question is, what is the context of the stat? Which in doing so, by the way, that's where people don't realize. Obviously, stats have no inherent value of their own, but what they can potentially point to in the game, which an expert then follows up on, could be amazing. So, what funny thing is, when you say it like that, it actually makes a lot of sense. I can see why they have the angle that the idea is it's the guy whose job is not in theory to know the game in depth, who throws the stat to you to sort as if to say, what does this mean? Yeah, that's a very that division of labour makes perfect sense.
No, it does, and of course that again shows the skill set on the cast as well. But so this does several things, and if you're an aspiring caster going out there, the way I would suggest that a good way to prepare for a game is you do the eye test first, and you say, that's a really dominant top lane. How the heck did he get, all of this lead, and how did he do so much damage with his stuff? So one of my favorite stats to use is gold efficiency, right? Where actually someone looks like they're doing more than the resources they're given. You look at the eye test first, and then you go look for the stats to reinforce that afterwards, right? So you're not just using the number and then getting it to lie to you and then telling you, oh, you just missed this, and it's actually not there. The analysis is incorrect. I think that one of the most important things to do on a broadcast, and in general anyway, this is actually something that was talked about with, I think it was when Monty did that video on why the LCS broadcast was struggling going to remote. It's they're showing the wrong plays or the wrong stats over what they're trying to talk about. Visual reinforcement and reinforcement with stats is incredibly powerful, and that can give you a bit of backing to someone who does have less information about the game and maybe can latch onto that. But you need to make sure you're on the right path first before you bring out the stats, otherwise they will mislead you most of the time.
Yeah, just as one example here, I felt like Team Liquid wasn't necessarily doing well against top teams. And then I look at the actual statistics, and the statistics back that up. So developing the argument first, and then using the statistics as sort of a supporting argument is the more ideal way of doing it.
So there's a really good one for C9 as well, because you look at them making proactive plays and choking people out of games, and then you realize you go look for the stats, and they have really high lane control, so they take more percentage of the lane minions in the game than the enemy team. So they're denying and getting more minions than most teams in the LCS, and their jungle control is really high too. So you look at how they are pinning you back, continually making aggressive plays, blow after blow after blow. You find the numbers to back that up, and suddenly you start building up a more comprehensive picture.
Also, I think the interesting thing about the premise you're trying to show in this video as well is that the stats we're talking about in the case, when they say he's the worst player or whatever, loads of those are going to be incredibly individualistic stats. For example, if he's a top lane, there might even just be lane related stats. Well, the problem with that premise there is his job in his team to smash lane and win top lane every game? Probably not, right? It's not the most important thing he could maybe do. So I'll try and give you an anecdote. The problem is, unfortunately, it's a few years ago, so I might scoff which name is which, but I definitely know the team. I just can't remember entirely which way around it was. So basically, it was actually in season 9 in the LEC, you had the SK Gaming team, which had the aforementioned Selfmade on it, right? Which was his first year in the LEC, and he individually already looked amazing. But if you remember that team back then, it wasn't a very good team. In the spring, it was the one where they had Whirlib, and they actually had your boy from the LGL. Pyrian was the mid laner, if people don't remember.
He did really well after that, by the way.
Yeah.
Really well.
And they had Crown Shot, obviously, was the AD carry, and then Dreams was the support. So actually, looking back now, it's not even that bad a lineup, but at the time, it was a lot of fresh players that hadn't played. And because at the time, everyone's perception was Pyrian actually was surprisingly better than you'd expect. He wasn't terrible. But then Selfmade was carrying all the time, basically. Everyone at the time said, right, well, one, get Whirlib the fuck out there, because Whirlib was famous for having a very limited champion pool.
Jacks
and then
all the stuff.
And if you remember, for the summer split, they actually, on paper, upgraded him by bringing in Zachary, who was the carry of their SK Prime, the academy level team, the ERL team rather. And basically, the logic was that would not only be an upgrade that he would be the better top laner, but then eventually they even replaced Pyrion with Genax, who obviously himself later became a top laner. Off the top of my head, I believe it went like this. I believe it went that when they replaced Whirlib, who in theory on paper everyone said was the worst player, like relative to role and limitations, when they replaced him with Sakura, everyone's logic went like, right, well now the team will actually win gate, they'll be even better, right? From what I remember, it was something weird, like I forget if it was Pyrion or Whirlib who was doing this, but it was something like someone noticed that when they made this player change, they actually were doing way worse in the games and they were losing loads more games. And someone made like a point that was something along the lines of like, again, this is where I'm going to scoff it because I might not remember which player's which, but like, let's say it was Whirlib. Like, let's say Whirlib wasn't a good top laner, but in this particular case, it's like at times he knew, like, right, well then fuck my lane and I'll just go with the jungler and we both dive mid or something, you know, like he basically was doing something in the game that sometimes actually made them win more games, even though in isolation, he in theory was the worst top laner and a much worse player than the one that you were supposedly trying to upgrade him for. So that's another aspect there, if you're a fan or an outsider, which is like, we can all speculate, but there will always be like internal dynamic elements that you can't really always guess at. Like even that one, you're trying to sort of like intuit almost like a fucking like a Sherlock Holmes. Like, well, this happened, therefore maybe like you're not really knowing for certain who did what on that one.
What's really funny about that is you mentioned Pyrion. Nation has actually made his way over to the LGL as well this season, and he was like on the awful Origin roster, and then he didn't, you know, but individually thought, okay, all right, maybe he's doing all right, just on the eye test, but he was on like the most losing team in the LEC. He's like a top 3 mid laner in the LGL now and looking good, and we actually have a really stacked mid lane pool because, you know, we still got this RA guy in there. And you also, like, there's actually a very similar example for Rascal Jester, our number 2 team. Have a bot lane they brought in from Korea, Sol and Secret. They were on Spenu or something, like an absolute no-name, not great team at the bottom, and they are suddenly like a top 2 lane. And that's, you know, sometimes you can say, oh, that's partly due to competition, external factors, but there is still bluntly like these players are performing way better in a different scenario when statistically you could look at them and say they are crap players.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one example of that, I believe, would be like Ghost. Is that Ghost was on kind of a crap team, wasn't necessarily playing very well. Gets on Dom 1, and then all of a sudden, like, the team just becomes so much better after they got rid of Nuclear.
Sure.
Even though he's not necessarily, like, a super great individual player. Like, sometimes you just need somebody to sort of fit the team. And there's just so many things in the game that you can't necessarily
Season 8 Sneaky was a similar fact to that, actually. Season 8 Sneaky, like, he had not great carry stats,